because, as we all know, we've had the very sad news that our chair has passed away. I would like to start this meeting before we go further with taking a minute's silence to recognise the contribution Nick Cottle has made to the council, to his community, and also particularly to this committee. I know he's been a good friend across all parties, and I think that a minute's silence would be appropriate. So I can ask everyone, please stand. Thank you very much indeed, everyone. For those who are aware, there will be formal eulogies and consideration of Nick's contribution to the council at full council at the end of the month. And in addition, I'd just like to share the sad news that Des Harris, who had been an active member of this committee, again, we've lost him in the last few weeks. So again, that will be recognised at full council. But thank you very much indeed, everyone. Right, 2 or 3 things we need to do before we go into the main bit of the meeting. First of all, I'd just like to remind everybody of the normal hybrid planning and considerations. While we have public speakers and members of public in the chamber, we also have members of public watching the meeting on Teams. Cameras within the council chamber allow us to film the meeting for viewers on Teams and also record the meeting. Therefore, if any member of the public present, they should be aware that we are recording, and if they don't want, even if they're not participating in the meeting, and if this causes any concerns, please let me know now. Members who have brought their devices with them should ensure that their cameras are switched off, and more importantly, their device microphone and speakers are muted for the duration of the meeting, otherwise this causes feedback. Public speakers contributing to the meeting virtually should switch their cameras off and put their microphones on mute until they're invited to speak by the chair. It's not permitted for any other member of the public viewing by Teams to contribute to the meeting at any time. Should any member of the planning committee wish to speak, please raise your hand and catch my attention, or the vice chair, or a legal advisor, or a lead officer along this table. When members in the chamber speak, remember to switch on your desk microphone so that all those in attendance can hear you. Please do not use the chat function within Teams for anything. All contributions must be made verbally. And can we all please ensure that our mobiles are switched to silence? Thank you very much indeed. I would like now to, before I take apologies and move on to the agenda, because I am going to be, and you'll hear this in a minute, declaring an interest, I need to ask the committee to appoint a vice chair today for the meeting. I'd like to call upon Councillor Reid, whether or not he's willing to be the acting vice chair for the day, and whether the committee are happy to endorse that. Are people content? Yep. Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Reid. Do you want to come and join us?
You got room for another one?
Yeah. Right, we'll then go to the agenda, and apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. We have two apologies for absence. That's from councillors Adam Boyden and Martin Lovell. We have Steve Ashton with us, substituting for Martin Lovell.
Thank you very much. Right, item 2, minutes of the previous meeting. I understand these are not ready. They will be, as always, circulated to members and will be approved at the next meeting. On to declarations of interest. Do we have any other than I will declare a personal interest in application 1? And I will ask the Vice Chair to take over the meeting for that item. Right, on to public question time. And do we have any public questions today? No, thank you very much indeed. I will then now move on to item 5. I will hand over to the Chair, and if someone can remember to come and find me at the end. Okay, then.
We'll drag you back in.
Thank you very much indeed.
Again. Oh, we're on. Good morning, everybody. Well, this is my first time as chair, so I'm hoping you'll be extra gentle with me. And I shall be relying very much on officer support. So we are starting off with Ed, who's going to present this case to us. Is that right? Over to you, Ed.
That's correct. Thank you very much, Acting Chair. This item is application reference 2025/1059/VRC. So a VRC because this is an application to vary conditions of a previously approved permission. The previously approved permission is referenced in the title there, 2022/1945/REM, which was a reserved matters application, and that application was for the construction of a single dwelling on just outside Westbury Sub Mendip. That application is an extant permission which doesn't expire until the 4th of June 2026. So the application we're looking at today seeks to vary conditions 1, 3, 6, 12 and 8. And those relate to the plans list, the visibility display, spot levels, the construction environmental management plan, which was already approved. That sounds like a lot. It actually, the principal differences, as you will see, relate to the plans and the visibility displays. There is an update to bring to the committee's attention. Just before the weekend, so on the 29th of August, the council received updated plans. So that's existing and proposed site plans. A visual was also submitted. That wouldn't be an approved document. So it's mainly the existing and proposed site plans. We wouldn't normally accept revised plans so close to committee. However, in this instance, the plans simply clarify that the existing hedgerow would be retained and that the visibility display proposed would match the approved visibility display on the reserved matters condition. So on the basis that officers don't consider the changes to be substantive, we have accepted them and we consider that they are suitable for committee to consider these revised plans. And I'll come on to show you the differences between what we had before the weekend or before Friday and what we've got now. So this is the location plan. So we're sort of just to the southeast of Westbury Sub Mendip. You can see the application site shown in red there. And then we've got land under the control of the applicant in blue. Here's a street view of the site, most recent Google Street View image. So this slide here shows the existing and proposed plans before we got the revisions that we received on the Friday. So on the left-hand side, an existing site plan, and on the right-hand side, a proposed. And the difference there, it is a bit of a game of spot the difference, but it's broadly this hedgerow, which my cursor is just hovering over, that is shown on this Rev A, and the visibility display you'll notice has been tweaked to match the existing. So I'll just go back to the previous slide so you can see on the previous slide the hedgerow is not shown on that plan there, and the visibility display there is actually slightly wider. So the consented scheme has a slightly reduced visibility display, and what the proposed plans want to do is match what the consented plans show in terms of visibility. So that is just a slightly more zoomed in version of the proposed plans, and a bit more zoomed in again to show the hedgerow in place. This plan shows the previously approved floor plans. So the dwelling as currently proposed is a different design, but in terms of scale, it's broadly comparable to what is consented. Again, that's the ground level and first floor level of the proposed plans. This slide shows the consented scheme from the front or south, and to compare, this is what is being proposed. So the plans are drawn differently, but the scale and height of the building are all very similar. So that's the east side as consented and as proposed. Again, the design is different, but the scale is very similar. And moving around to the other side, so we've got the consented top left and proposed bottom right. And around the back on the north side, consented elevation D and proposed bottom right. Which brings us on to the conditions. So the conditions are all as per the consented scheme, except the plans would change, visibility displays would change. So it's all very much as it was. The design of the scheme is different, but the overall scale is very much similar. And that's the final slide. Thank you very much. Actually, that one's. I'll come back to that one. I'm going to be displaying that photo when we have a speaker. So yes, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We go on to the speakers now. The first speaker, I believe, is Fletcher Robinson of CPRE Somerset. Would you like to come forward, please? And you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. CPRE Somerset has concerns about this planning application. We hope that the applicants will consider giving the committee a couple of simple undertakings before it can be approved, and I will come on to those in a moment. Firstly, it does need to be stressed what an incredibly sensitive location this is inside the national landscape, in a relic quarry on the top road into Westbury and within yards of the edge of the conservation area. The house will be highly visible for miles from the south due to its elevated position. Walkers on the well-used Strawberry line will see it clearly when they look up at the Mendip Hills. Much thought has clearly been given to integrating the appearance of the building with the quarry wall. However, it is a large building and different from the traditional white cottages that you would expect to see in this landscape. So it's all the more important, therefore, that as much as possible can be done to integrate it into the landscape. Therefore, firstly, what we are hoping for is a simple undertaking that the visibility displays applied for and approved will actually be created, and that they will be created by hedging containing trees. From what we've just heard, I understand that that undertaking has in fact now been given. Secondly, we are concerned that as much as possible be done to respect the dark skies policy in the village. Valued views into the national landscape at night from the south will be affected by light spill from the building. We understand there are high so-called clear story windows in the design, which are far less likely to be curtained or blinded than windows within reach. So we also respectfully ask whether a second undertaking can be provided by the applicants that these high windows will be provided with means to prevent light spill from them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then we go on to supporter, the architect, Nadine Mirza. Apologies if I haven't got the name pronounced right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning, councillors. You've heard that I already have a declared professional interest in supporting this application. I also have, as Councillor White will know from our correspondence, a personal interest in that I am the partner of the applicant, Moira. I actually wrote to the Parish Council on the 20th of June, suggesting that I attend their meeting to, as here, explain our proposals. But regrettably, I received no reply. Had my suggestion been taken up, then the misconceptions that led to the parish objection could have been avoided. Moira purchased the site this year with the existing consent for a new dwelling, with reserve matters approved by this committee in 2023. The approval, as you've seen, is for a highly contemporary and exciting design by the architect Paul Kellett. Our proposal is for minor amendments to this design, specifically to improve the building's relationship with the quarry, with the village, and with the wider protected landscape. We're reducing the amount of glass in the consented scheme by 65%, helping to preserve dark skies, reduce reflectance towards the Somerset levels, and protect against bird strike. We've achieved this by simply reversing the roof tilt, allowing sunlight to penetrate whilst avoiding expansive glazing and the clerestory windows that face the village, which is a move that has been commended in the parish response. These improvements have been helped by omitting the consented glass balustrades and by introduction of deep brise-soleil shading. The proposal now responds positively to Somerset's declared climate emergency by aspiring to be both carbon neutral and Passive House standard. The building's facade has been broken to evoke the fractured geology of the quarry rather than appearing as a landed spacecraft, and we've clad it in timber that will weather to a pale grey to blend it with rock face. From afar, it will now be impossible to say where landscape ends and where the building begins. Our design statement explained that there is no change proposed to the mass, scale, position, height, or to consented vision displays or soft landscaping, and crucially, there is no proposal to remove existing trees or hedgerows. We submit that our amendment is a clear improvement over the consented scheme. I trust that this statement will help councillors agree that the planning officer's recommendation for approval is well founded and that the parish objection based on a misreading of the submitted documents should be set aside. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mowbray. And we're going to hear now from the Parish Council. Westbury Parish Council is Councillor Penny Colwell, please. And you have 3 minutes.
Good morning. I would like to draw your attention to the picture that's just come up on the screen, which is taken from the Strawberry Line and shows very clearly how evident the quarry plot is within the landscape. The site of this planning application, as has already been said, is outside the village development boundary and within the Mendip Hills National Landscape. The village conservation area is about 35 metres away to the west of the plot. Westbury Parish Council initially supported the application as the property was nestled within an old quarry site and would be screened by the quarry walls, hedgerows and trees. There was also a suggestion that the imported earth mound within the quarry would be reduced in height. The Parish Council had intended to object to the apparent removal of the existing hedgerow adjacent to Tor Road in the recent application. However, we note that the amended site plan clarifies that that will not happen now. It should also be pointed out, though, that there will be no reduction of the earth mound within the quarry, and the roof line on the west side of the plot will be quite prominent above the quarry wall. Westbury Sub-Mendip Parish Council and the Mendip Hills National Landscape both have a dark skies policy. We welcome the reduction in the amount of glazing, the use of brise soleil, and the substitution of the reflective glazed balustrades on the south of the building. However, there is no indication in the new design that the south-facing clerestory windows will have automatic blinding, without which the building will be very visible within the nighttime landscape. The local community values highly the glimpsed views of the village and the southern slopes of the Mendip Hills from the levels and moors, and extensive internal or external lighting from the site will be completely out of character. We request additional planting to the west side of the site to mask the prominence of the roof line above the quarry wall. That the hedgerow is reinstated to its previous 4-metre height to the north of the visibility splay. That trees are replanted within the southern hedge line, both to reduce the impact of the building and support the foraging line for the local bat population. And that the clerestory windows are automatically blinded when the lights are on inside the house. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now we have the division member, Heather Shearer. Is she not here?
Yeah, so we've printed her speech on Rosie's page.
Ah. Is it?
Yes, please, Jay. No, just take that with her.
Okay, I've got it. Okay, we have a statement from the member of Mendip West, Heather Shearer, and I will be reading it out. So please bear with me. This is from Heather, this site has seen 5 planning applications, has 93 associated documents, hundreds of pages of reports and conflicting drawings, and 12 versions of a key and very difficult to read drawing, number 1435.02. It is hard to see from the public papers the exact implications of the requested variations to conditions. The site has transformed from the officer's initial report, describing it as the house being glimpsed from Top Road from the existing vehicle access, to an open site with no hedgerow or trees as per drawing 2500-3 and the front page illustration of the current design statement. There will be significant visual impact. So it's no wonder the Parish Council feel frustrated and subject to professional manipulation of the planning process. Please note that the Parish Council in question is Westbury sub Mendip and not Wookey as named in the report. It is not unreasonable to question other assertions in the report when an error like this is overlooked. I support the Parish Council in their request for the retention of a 4-metre high hedge along the south side of the site, reinstatement of the trees along the hedge line, landscaping of the western boundary, and automatic blinding of the south-facing, pardon me to describe it, clerestory windows. In addition, I would like to request that all planning officers be required to comment on the inward views of the Mendip Hills National Landscape and all other protected landscapes when considering planning applications. This community actively takes the protection of Mendip Hills National Landscape and the environment more generally very seriously. I have myself joined them scanning the hedgerows for their annual glowworm survey, a very serious undertaking that the community has supported every year since 2005. So I would encourage the applicant to actively respect the concerns of the community they are joining. Thank you. And that is a statement from Councillor Heather Shearer. And so we move on, please. Can we please hear now from the applicant's agent, which I believe is Matt Williams. And Matt, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Matt Williams of Brimble Lead, speaking as the applicant's agent. Firstly, I'd like to wish my sincere condolences to Nick's family, friends and colleagues. I knew Nick for over 20 years from my time at Mendip, and he was a top man. Such a sad loss. With this application, you've heard this committee granted reserve matters approval for the reserve matters dwelling in 2023, which provides a fallback position. So your consideration is really focused on this revised design against what's already been approved. So the elevation and floor plan drawings provided with the application in which Mr. Winter displayed had red dotted lines. And that's the outline of the approved scheme. And it demonstrates that the height, scale, mass and floor space of the revised dwelling is comparable with the approved dwelling. In terms of architectural design, the proposed dwelling takes the same contemporary form, and we trust you will agree that the grey timber rain screen, the grey render and the living walls will provide a softer and more muted finish than the approved white render when seen in the surrounding Mendip Hills landscape. The photo that was displayed earlier, if you imagine what's been approved, is a white rendered block with more glazing. Parish Council welcomed the reduced amount of glazing. The glazing now proposed will be recessed with Brise Soleil solar shading. And as you've heard, the approved glazed balustrading on the front terrace has been removed. In terms of internal light spillage, which again you've heard from the speakers, you will see from the report that the same condition is being recommended as the reserve matters approval, which requires a scheme to prevent internal light spill. That's condition 13. And I can assure you, I give the assurance that there was a request about those blinds on the south being automated, which the applicant does agree to, and that will form part of the scheme required for condition 13. The Parish Council objected to the removal of the roadside hedgerow and trees. However, this was never proposed, and actually on the key, on the submitted plan, it always said that that vegetation was being removed. But we have nevertheless clarified that to give that assurance with the drawings that Mr. Winter has shown, and that will be conditioned accordingly. Parish Council suggested or incorrectly said that visibility wasn't previously a requirement. It was condition 3 of the reserve matters approval, and that's being replicated. The visibility is the same. We sincerely hope you will agree that the revised design scheme is more respectful of the site's context and the wider Mendip Hills national landscape than the approved scheme, and therefore that you approve this application as recommended. Thank you for your time. And I should just say finally, you will note that Mendip Hills national landscape team did not offer any comments in the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Well, we've heard the application and we've heard the speakers. So we shall go into what we have here. Well, what we've heard from them is it's a highly visible site, already has planning permission, and we're looking at variation of conditions. So is everybody clued up? Any questions, any comments? Are we happy? Over to you. And we're going to start with Helen.
Thank you. Can you hear me? This first came to Planning Committee in 2020 when I was on the Mendip Planning Board. And I don't think, apart from possibly Simon and Ross, there was anybody, maybe Ross wasn't on it then actually. I think it was just me and you, no one else was there. So I just want to just quickly tell you that there was a lot of discussion. The AONB, as was, objected very strongly to it, and there was a lot of discussion about that and about how visible it would be in the landscape. And the fact that it's in a quarry, the three sides around from three sides you wouldn't see it, but as the parish council pointed out, from down below looking up, you could possibly see it unless it was well masked. And we wanted the hedgerow to stay, and I thought that we had asked the trees to stay. I just heard what the applicant said, or the agent said, which is that there was never a condition to keep that vegetation there, but I had thought that was the case. I also had thought that they talked about a lower ground floor and an upper ground floor, and the whole point of that was to keep it low so it didn't come up too much. And we had a lot of discussion about it. I can't actually remember which way I voted, but you know, it's quite important. That's why site visits are important, actually. I did go to the site. I haven't been this time. I have heard a rumour that maybe that's what we were just told, that a lot of the vegetation has been cleared. And so I've got some points I want to ask about for clarification. So that went through. We approved it, and I thought we approved it on the grounds that there would be good landscaping, right? That went to Planning Committee. I understand that there's been two applications subsequently. There's been a reserved matters, and then there's already been a change to the conditions where somebody applied to put a visibility splay in. Now, as I understand it, a visibility splay is usually needed for a large estate, and you have to have 43 metres either side. This is one property. Highways, I've actually found the original paper. Highways did make a comment on the outline application saying that it wasn't exactly as they'd like it, but it was okay because it was just one property. I want to know, did those other two, I had some time off last year, I want to know, did those other two applications come to committee, or were they signed off by officers where the visibility splay was approved, which would involve taking out a hedgerow? And I also want to know if the original hedgerow is still there, because I haven't been to visit it this time round, or if it is proposed that it's replanted. I want to know if it is to be replanted, can we do what the parish council asks, which is to have it 4 metres high, so that from down below or from glancing, looking up from the village, it's not sticking out and really obvious. And lastly, I'd like to know if, I think they're called spot heights, when you actually do proper, heights above sea level. As I understood it, they were going to lower the base of the quarry a little bit so that the whole building sat a bit lower. Now we've got a situation where we're being told that they're not lowering. In fact, they might be even bringing up the level of the quarry base, the quarry floor. So I want to know if the spot heights are going to change. I saw from the drawing that the chimney now will stick up and that will be visible. It might be the only thing that's visible, in which case that may be acceptable. But I just want to make sure that all those original concerns that we had are still on the table and that we are addressing those. As I say, I'm very interested in the sequence of events and whether this actually came back to Planning Committee and whether those other things were ever approved by this committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, so just to clarify on the sequencing, the reserve matters was granted at this committee and we haven't had anything in between. So this current application is seeking to do some of the things that you are asking about, Councillor Kay. So in terms of landscaping, the condition attached to that reserve matters application that was approved by this committee had a landscaping condition, and that said landscaping should be as per plans. So the current application also has a landscaping condition which says landscaping should be as per the plans. What the current proposed landscaping condition doesn't do, and what the previous one didn't do either, was have the bit that the parish council were asking for in relation to landscaping on the western side. So if committee felt that approval of this application would only be possible subject to that additional bit of landscaping, what we could do is, instead of the proposed condition, which is landscaping to be as per the proposed plans, we could have a condition along the lines of no occupation until the submission of a landscaping scheme, which we could then have a bit more detail that would come in from the applicant, and that could include the additional planting that the parish is asking for. So that's landscaping. In terms of visibility, so the reserve matters scheme showed on the site plan a visibility splay, and to the west the visibility splay was 33 metres as opposed to 43 metres. And as you mentioned, Councillor Kay, Highways said that that was below normal, but my understanding is that that was reduced to retain the hedgerow. When this current application originally came in, it was showing 43 metres standard visibility. And I think what happened there really was because the site has changed hands, different architects, the current architects thought, well, you know, I ought to do what is the highway standard. But the revised plans that we got before the weekend have clarified that we're going to stick with the 33 metre visibility as approved, and the hedgerow is to be retained. So that is the bit about visibility.
Can you clarify? Is that it's not been taken out, has it?
Well, I don't think the intention was ever to remove the hedge. I think it's probably more of a are you asking if the hedge has already gone? I don't believe it has. I'm not the case officer for this one. I'm his team leader. As far as I'm aware, and so I haven't visited the site. But as far as I'm aware, the hedgerow has not been removed. Sorry, I slightly lost my train of thought there. So that was the landscaping visibility. You also asked about spot height. So we've got a similar, same wording condition as we had approved on the reserve matters, which says proposed spot levels, development hereby approved shall be carried out in accordance with the spot levels as shown on the approved plans. So that's same wording as was really. So.
Okay, just to say to the rest of you, that means that you made this decision on the reserve matters when I wasn't here. So over to you really, because you've already approved the spot heights as were. I would have probably asked for them to be lower, but it looks like that's already gone through and we can't go back on that. Yeah. Okay, if this does go through, can we add those extra conditions that some of the people asked about with regard to allowing, putting in the landscape scheme, as you just said, rather than a landscape plan? So we can get some extra trees in. Is that possible to do in this meeting? And can I propose that now, even if there's not an approval on the table? I don't know in terms of protocol procedure whether I can do that. I'd also like to propose the idea of the blinds on the south-facing windows, please.
Okay. Well, I'm sure the committee has noted. Have you had answers to all your questions?
Well, when there's a proposal on the table, then perhaps I'll ask for those conditions to be added. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, I'm told you can suggest conditions. So we'll take those conditions as suggested.
Okay.
Can we go over now to Susanna, please?
I'm slightly confused because you're asking us to vary conditions 1, 3, 6, 12 and 8, one of which is proposed spot levels, and yet you're now telling me that there is no change. So is it different or is it not different? Because if it's not different, how are we varying it?
Valid question, Councillor Hart. It's simply because the plan numbers have changed. So we've got a new set of plans and those spot levels referred back to the plans. So we have to vary the condition that referred back to the original plans, because otherwise we would have a condition on this application which refer to the original plans, because the spot levels are written on that plan there that you have. So that plan is being varied, and condition 1 is the list of plans. So although the application mentions quite a few conditions to be changed, it's basically the main plans list. That's where the substance of the change is coming. It's a different house, essentially. That's what the change is.
Clear?
Not really. So it's a different house. So what I want to know is it going to be higher? And if it is, by what percentage relative to the plans that are accepted already on the table?
I can't give
Is
you
it a third higher? Is it a 10th higher? Is it, because
No,
otherwise
that's
it's just all meaningless.
might be easy.
If you show the red outline. Are you sharing that?
Oh, sorry.
We can't, unfortunately. We're just sharing the elevations that were part of the PowerPoint presentation. So the red lines that you can see, that's the height of the consented fallback position for the dwelling. But as you can see, the detail of the dwelling, with the exception probably of the chimney that was already pointed out, sits at or just below the consented levels. Yeah. Yes. That's the back wall. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, lovely. Martin.
This has already been approved previously, and we've been asked to consider a number of changes this morning. We've had an update. I think mostly it sounds very reasonable, but we've got the right to impose some conditions on it, and I would therefore propose that we accept this and would ask Helen Kay to reiterate, if she can, some of the concerns she had. My thing is that we must have, my main concern is the dark skies condition must be adhered to, and also any changes in vegetation, hedgerow and so on we should be looking at very carefully. We shouldn't dismiss those. But I think having previously approved this, I think we have to go ahead with it, despite the fact that I think it's within the parameters of what was approved before. That's my proposal.
Thank you, Chair. Committee's noted that. Steve, please.
I have a simple question here. The light spill condition, that's light coming from inside the house. Is there a possibility of extending that to cover external lighting to make sure external lighting is reduced or curtailed?
That's an additional. Yes, so condition 13 is for a scheme for lighting. So to do what you're asking for, Councillor Ashton, we would need an additional restrictive condition on external lighting. We do have standard wording condition that would achieve that, but that would require an additional condition on lighting.
Thank you. Just to clarify, I think an additional condition requiring details of external lighting, if it were to be provided, is perfectly reasonable in this instance. So if members were minded to add that, I don't think it would add an issue.
Yeah, we'll do Susanna, then we'll come back to
Do you
Helen.
mind telling us what the standard wording is, please? Or just a summary? It doesn't have to be the whole thing. I just think it's unfair if people can't have lighting that comes on when they get back late and also comes on if there's an intruder.
Through you, Chair, it would be a condition that requires details of any external lighting to be submitted to the council and approved before it's installed at the property. So we would take a reasonable view about things like proximity lighting and things like that you're mentioning there.
I thought Ed said there's a standard wording. So
that is the standard
wording.
wording.
No, that's basically it. And just let us know. So you wouldn't ever be in a situation where you're trying to say to someone, you just can't have lights that come on. No, thank you.
Okay, Helen.
Yeah, just on addition to that, I was told when we were looking at Selwood Garden Village application that you could ask for lighting that has a kind of a hood on it. So even if it's like security lighting coming on as you're driving in, for example, there's a hood which stops it going up into the skies. Can we add that, please? So that we've got the dark skies and we're ensuring that we've got the dark skies thing. So I don't have the exact wording for the other two conditions that I'd like to put on the table, which I think are now going to be attached to the vote on the approval. But perhaps you can say, I didn't get the name of those windows, that south-facing windows that
Clear story.
Okay, so that the blinds go on when they put lights on inside, something like that, which would be great because it means that then they're not going to be seen from the village or from people walking at dusk along the Strawberry Line or wherever. And the other one was about the hedgerow. Can we specify a size of hedgerow? I mean, the parish council wanted 4 metres. Is that unreasonable? 4 metres is quite high, isn't it? Yeah.
What we would normally do with landscaping, as opposed to specifying hedge heights, I know we have done this exceptionally, is we would ask for the submission of a landscaping scheme, which would then be approved by one of our specialists, just in case, there's some issue with achieving the very specific, at least 4 metres. And, as you'll recall as well, the maintenance of hedgerows often means that, they're cut back to 2 metres or whatever, and then they grow back up. So it's easier and more practical, really, if we just ask for a landscaping scheme rather than a specific.
Could that be with the approval of the divisional councillors? Could you, I know that's just off as a delegation, but because they've both got concerns, I mean, really, it would be great if the parish council and the natural landscapes people saw those landscape schemes as well. But if that's going to make it too complicated, could there just be an informal chat with the divisional councillors to make sure that that landscape scheme that they're happy with it? Because there has been a lot of people writing about this.
Yeah, I'm sure we could make a proposal that I think the proposal seems to be going, we accept it with conditions, and we could ask that those conditions have to be approved by the local member, I'm sure, is that?
So approval of details pursuant to a condition is normally an application delegated to officers. We can make a commitment in the room that we have a discussion with the division member if that's what committee wants.
Okay. So would you be happy to second the proposal, Helen?
I thought somebody already had, but yes, I'd be happy to second it on those grounds.
Well, no, it's Martin's proposal. And Martin, could you expand your proposal?
I'll try. First of all, I'm really grateful to Ed for the update, which I think explains some of Councillor Shearer's concerns, which actually deals with some of those, because she was obviously had to write that in advance. That we accept this proposal with the conditions that's been outlined by the seconder and others, which I haven't noted down, so I can't tell you, but I think you can summarise those. One, of course, was to do with the dark skies conditioning, the external light conditioning, and the landscaping scheme, which I presume means delegated authority.
Yeah.
Thank you. So just in summary, listening to the discussion, effectively it's a new condition in terms of submission of landscape scheme to officers and in consultation with the landscape officer for sign off, but also for notification for the local members. Condition 13 is the condition that looks at light spill from internally. So where we were thinking about the blinds, the agent did confirm that they were happy, the applicant was happy to provide those. We would expect to see that as part of the scheme. The one alteration I'm proposing is on the last sentence. It says, and these shall be maintained thereafter in accordance. I was going to suggest retained and maintained because internal fixtures and fittings become a bit of a problem for planning. But if it's a requirement as part of the light spill condition, and we've got the word retained in there, that gives it a bit more security for members. And then beyond that, it was a new additional condition for restriction of external lighting without prior submission to the local authority for us to sort of look at and then judge the impact of any lighting.
Thank you. Okay, so we've got a proposal from Martin and a seconded from Helen. We pass this, we approve this application. Sorry, did you want to come in, Barry? No.
Earlier on I did, yes. This business about the 4 metre high hedge is quite ludicrous. These people can't be expected to go and trim a 4 metre high hedge every year, but I believe you said, Ed, that we're going to have a landscaping scheme, not a requirement for this ridiculous hedge. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So going back to the proposal, we're accepting this proposal with conditions that we have automatic blinds in the south-facing windows. The outside lights come under a condition to be agreed. We have landscaping to be agreed. Is there anything else? I think we've done that. So if we're all happy, we can go to a vote. Do we all accept? That appears to be pretty unanimous, so that is passed. Thank you very much indeed. Sorry, did someone abstain? There's a bit of confusion. Can we have the vote again, please? Are we all in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 9. Yeah. 9. Yes. Okay. And I shall abstain.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Request a comfort break for 5 minutes, Mr. Chairman.
That seems very prudent. Yes, 5-minute break. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and welcome back to Planning East Committee. We will now move on to agenda item 6, and I believe the case officer today describing it will be yourself, Dawn de Beers. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so the case officer is Trudy Gallagher, but I'm presenting the case on her behalf today. So the application before members is in outline with all matters reserved save access. The development is looking for a mixed use neighbourhood, which is looking to include 620 dwellings, a care home, a primary school, a nursery, a new local centre, open space and on-site infrastructure. So the application is being presented to committee on the request of the Chief Planning Officer, given the scale of the project and in the wider public interest. So there was no objection from Parish Council or adjoining members in terms of the scheme, but given the scale of the development, it was felt that committee would probably like to see this one and determine it. So this slide just shows an aerial view of the site and the extent of the red outline. Effectively, the site borders Canardsgrave Road to the east, Ridge Lane to the south, and Compton Road to the west. There's also an unclassified road within the site called Dark Lane, which is accessed from an almost central position. I'll just put my cursor over it here. So it's this lane down here is Dark Lane. And the plan to the left shows the topography of the site. So what you can see is the level lines, and there's existing residential development to the east and west of the site. This includes some dwellings that front onto Compton Road and a few dwellings towards the top of the site that adjoin but also sit outside of the application site. So there's a cluster of development just up here. Sorry, this cursor is quite sensitive. That's outside the development site. There's also a singular dwelling down here as well that's outside of the development site. So this just shows a wider aerial view of the site in context of the town and the wider available facilities. So for members' information, it's this land parcel here, and then this is the main town of Shepton Mallet. So for context, the site comprises 53 hectares of arable fields and trees and hedgerow. Towards the rear of the site, there's an overlapping full consent, which consented the relocation of the Midsummer Showground. The red line shows the topography sloping up from the town to Ridge Lane and the dip that presents a central spine through the site. The site also includes currently some agricultural buildings. The modern barns are proposed to be removed as part of this development, and the stone barn is proposed to provide the bat house as part of ecological mitigation, and I'll show you some photos of that shortly. So in terms of constraints on the site, there is a blanket tree preservation order over the site, and the site lays within the Somerset Levels and Moors Ramsar site. There's also on-site local wildlife site, which is shown nearly centrally within the site. And so this area here, that's the centralised wildlife site. There's also an area of ecological potential to the east of Dark Lane, and overall the site is considered to be moderate in terms of agricultural land value, so level 3B. The site adjoins Shepton Mallet Conservation Area, which is shown with the purple line on this slide, so it's outside of but just adjacent. And there are a number of listed buildings on the opposite side of Canardsgrave Road, which are orientated towards the site. There's also a public right-of-way to Strawberry Line in close proximity to the site, and the site is located in flood zone 1, which is the lowest risk of flooding. The site is not within in itself any national landscape areas, with the Mendip Hills and Cranbourne Chase being 8 and 10 kilometres distant, respectively. Sorry, I'm just closing pop-ups. In respect of policy, the site is shown highlighted in orange and was allocated for a mixed-use development within the local plan, part 1, with policy CP9 highlighting the acceptance of 500 new homes, mixed-use, open space, and retention of land to the south for the Midsummer Show. It set out the requirement for a comprehensive drainage strategy, new primary school, and small business uses that would be compatible with the residential use of the site. The Shepton Mallet Neighbourhood Plan also sort of sets out the allocation for this site of at least 600 dwellings, and have allocated a further site under policy 2 for 150 dwellings on the area of land indicated by the green arrow on that image. The The red line for this slide shows the settlement boundary, and the majority of the site falls within this. The area outside of this would comprise green open space. The neighbourhood plan was made on the 13th of August this year and increased the minimum scale of development for this site to at least 600. This forms part of the local plan and is relevant in considering this application. In terms of policy compliance, the proposal looks to provide a mixed-use residential-led scheme in accordance with the overall numbers set out within the local and neighbourhood policies. With the absence of a 5-year land supply, the tilted balance would add weight to the positive determination of the application, provided that any adverse impacts would not significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. So the application is fairly dated, having been originally submitted to the authority for determination in 2018. Delays were caused following the need for phosphate mitigation and the impact that this subsequently had on the viability of the scheme. The application has been subject to detailed review through the Somerset Quality Review Panel in 2023, which is attached as an appendix at the back of the report. A revised layout was provided early in 2024, and the latest consultation was March of this year. Following that, we did do an updated screening opinion, which in April, which concluded that the development would not be EIA development. So some members will recall there was a briefing to look through sort of the scheme overall, from which several issues were raised with regard to connectivity and sustainable transport. These issues raised are addressed later in the presentation. So the next series of slides will show the photos of the site with arrows just indicating the location of the view. So this first one is probably most familiar for everyone. It's the roadway just opposite our offices here, showing the current entrance into the site. So this top image shows a view over the 5-bar gate into the first land parcel, with a view from further around the top of the site through the existing trees, which are to be retained. This top view is a view of properties opposite the site, which are not listed, but they are within the conservation area, and a view from the site within the setback across the landscape top end of the site, which would be retained as part of this proposal. So slightly further down Canardsgrave Road, viewing the properties opposite, this comprises the listed buildings known as Field Inn and its cottages. The properties immediately opposite, these are retained and outside of the development. So the lower view shows the area proposed as attenuation and would enable a nice blue-green gap to ensure that the setting of the listed buildings are appropriately respected. This is another view of the northeast open space and attenuation area. There are indicative routes around these attenuation ponds, which suggest dual use in terms of drainage, but also providing ecological and wellbeing benefits for future and nearby residents. So this slide shows the location of the access, which is a detailed matter for this consent. Currently, there is a T-junction in this location, and the proposal is to mend this to form a roundabout with a new arm providing the main access into the site. It is worth noting, though, and we'll come on to this later, that the site proposes a number of betterments in respect of accessibility, with a new pedestrian and cycle route running down Canardsgrave Road. So these detail the existing crossing point, which again would be enhanced as part of this proposal. And the top image shows a view into the site in the location of the proposed school, and a view down Dark Lane into the site. Dark Lane is proposed to be retained as a cycle and pedestrian route through the site. Top view looking north, middle looking south, and the bottom looking east, giving an idea of the scale of the site. The landscaping in the photos forms part of the structural green open space through the centre of the site, as shown on the indicative layout. So the top right image shows one of the retained trees within the green corridor, and the other two images providing views to the east and west. And the bottom image just showing the roof lines of the properties on the opposite side of Canardsgrave Road. So the stone barn, this is the stone barn that's being retained as part of the application. It's in the location as shown by the red arrow, is to be retained as the Bat House. The bottom left view shows a view to the south over the attenuation area, and the bottom right shows a view back up towards the residential dwellings to the north, which does demonstrate a clear separation and significant area of public open space. So top image is of the existing public right-of-way, and the other two show a view to the north and northwest. These images show a view of the adjoining residential property, which is Harefield. So that's the one that's outside of the application site mentioned to you earlier. The development has been arranged to maintain a pedestrian and cycle connection at this point to enable connectivity, but minimise traffic impacts to this neighbouring property. So this slide shows further views of the west pedestrian and cycle connection, which connects through to the existing public right-of-way. And the top image shown by the red arrow is in the location of the proposed care home and provides a view of the roof lines of the dwellings on the opposite side of Canardsgrave Road. The second image shows the location of a second pedestrian connection point, and the third, a further view from Compton Road. The views looking southwest and southeast towards the rear of the site. And the last two slides show photos from the rear of the site. The top showing the southern end of Dark Lane, so this is where Dark Lane comes out, and the second providing a view over the land parcels to the rear that are being retained as part of Mid Somerset Showground. And this top image shows the building that was consented as part of the relocated showground that has already been constructed, a view across the field and back up to Canardsgrave Road. So this is the land use parameter plan, and for orientation, this is the location of the proposed roundabout, and the dwelling outside of the application site is shown here. So the beige colour indicates residential development parcels with structural open space shown at the top, running centrally through the site and maintained in key areas within the site, such as Dark Lane. The pink area close to the roundabout is proposed as the commercial space, with the school on the opposite side of the road, shown in lilac, and the care home proposed just south of this is shown in a slightly deeper purple. So you've got the main active.
If you search the Southampton
at the front. Thank you very much. In terms of movement and access, we have got a parameter plan. So this wouldn't be the formal layout necessarily, but access is a detailed matter. So the access points along the edges are a detailed manner, and this suggests how the access strategy would be throughout the site. So in terms of road hierarchy, in the movement plan, there are a mix of primary, secondary and tertiary streets as shown in the layout. So that's dark pink, orange and yellow. Shared surfaces and Muse style streets are shown in light blue. And there are 3 shared pedestrian cycle accesses on the west boundary and an additional connection now proposed into the new neighbourhood plan allocated site. So that wasn't there when we provisionally ran this as a briefing for members. That's an additional connection point that's gone in. There is 1 shared pedestrian access cycle to the east and 6 pedestrian access points from Canardsgrave Road, which also provides the sole access for the care home and the 2 main vehicular access points. So that's effectively the big deep red arrows that you can see in the middle and nearer the bottom. It's just cut off the bottom of the corner, so apologies for that. Whilst the layout and therefore the form of development is indicative, because this is an outline planning permission, we would be looking to secure the connection points and the ongoing management and maintenance of these within the section 106. So this will include the additional link to land west of Canard's Grave, which is allocated under policy 2 of the neighbourhood plan. So that red circle at the bottom. So landscape parameter plan. So this shows the landscape parameter detailing a mix of public open spaces, parkland, orchard, public greens, public green, native shrub planting, agricultural and land reserved for the Mid Somerset Showground to the south. So the lined areas, I don't know if members can see it very clearly, but there's like hatched lines going down here. That is the linear corridors for the strategic planting throughout the site. And there are dots within that layout as well, which indicate the location of neighbourhood play areas and local areas of play. So again, you know, this isn't specific, but it would be controlled through the 106 in terms of ensuring their delivery in the right locations. In terms of building heights parameter, this one would be an approved plan. So this shows height parameters. So it's proposing up to 3 stories, which is shown in purple for the commercial area and the nursing home and some of the key residential units on the primary access road. So that would provide some legibility and interest within the site. The majority of residential site would be 2-storey, which is shown in pink, and the school is shown as a single-storey building, which is in a sort of beigey yellow colour. There was discussion following briefing regarding the clustering of 3-storey development along Canard's Grave Road, but given the existing 2-storey residential dwellings on the opposite side and the additional focus for the commercial and nursing home, it was considered sufficient to have just those 2 buildings on Canard's Grave Road with the retention of the rest, providing a source of interest and some legibility as you go into and through the site. And given the 3-storey buildings are deeper within the site, they would have less impact on the existing surrounding residential properties. So looking at density parameter plans, the application has been submitted for 620 dwellings and has been supported with a density parameter plan, which confirms that the overall density of the site is 29.76 dwellings per hectare, which is on the lower side for built up residential locations such as this, but is considered to be acceptable given the need for the wider landscaping and the edge location of this site. So this shows an illustrative master plan. So again, this plan would not be conditioned, but this just shows how all the fundamental elements sort of click together. It clearly shows the aspirations for the site and the considerations that have been given to the built green form and wider connectivity. So in terms of drainage, the drainage strategy was set out as a requirement for this site within the allocation. For the site, it's been set out over 2 slides, just because I didn't want members to miss any of the detail. So this details existing foul and surface and highway drains along with Wessex drains within the site, and proposes adoptable foul and surface water sewers. So the impermeable catchments, so the bit where water runs off from the commercial, school and care home site, and the additional hard surfacing as a result of the highway works are proposed to discharge into the surface water drainage system, which drains to the ponds. So the 2 blue areas that members can see at the top of the slide, they're attenuation ponds, so they will hold the surface water runoff, they will hold stormwater runoff for longer, and they will gradually release it at an appropriate rate. There are also 3 detention basins, so they're in light green. You can see the 2 on this slide, the 3rd one's on the next one. They would generally be dry, but in periods of heavy flooding, they would hold water at that point. And then again, they would release at a controlled rate. There's also 1 swale, which is a vegetated drainage channel. So the surface water drainage flows in a northeasterly direction, and on-site foul storage tank gives extra capacity and releases slowly into the foul drainage system. Wessex Water have confirmed that they agree with this approach. So this is the bottom of the site. So that's the top of the 2nd green pond that members saw, and this is the 3rd one down here. So improvements are also proposed to the rear of the site where there's an existing drainage ditch which serves Compton Road, which is going to be diverted into the new swale network that's being provided by this site. This will include storage bays and check dams. So at the moment, there's a bit of a drainage issue down the bottom of this site with localised flooding. That will be addressed through incorporating the additional capacity within this site. So members will be aware developers do not need to remedy existing deficiencies, but that is what's happening in this case. In terms of detail, proposed footway cycle crossing points. So this slide shows the detail of access arrangements for pedestrian and cycles at the top of the site, which includes an improved crossing link, pavement, cycleway down Canards Grave Road, and the pedestrian and cycle connections into and around the top of the site. So the red arrow highlights the position where the crossing point previously been considered, but due to forward visibility on that bend, there was a safety audit and it was confirmed that it was not safe to have a crossing point at that point, which is why it's moved across. So this is the detail of the roundabout junction, which continues to provide shared surfacing for pedestrians and cycle connections into the site and to the south, with an improved crossing in the location opposite the school. The red circle highlights the position of the proposed parallel zebra crossing, including a cycle crossing point. So the parallel crossings were audited both independently and by the Highway Authority, and no concerns were raised subject to technical approval. So during the briefing, again, the question was raised over whether it would be appropriate to have these as signalised crossings, which was investigated by Highways following that meeting. They confirmed the use of a light controlled Tooking crossing on Canards Grave Road would not be considered necessary, as the road alignment is suitable for safe parallel crossings, which prioritise pedestrians and allow for minimum delay. Outside of peak times, the crossing point would not be as well used, and drivers could experience a seeing through effect, where drivers are effectively less aware of pedestrians, resulting in faster vehicle speeds. There are no records of any incidents at the existing parallel crossing close to Compton Road, and the use of raised tables was also considered, but then discounted due to the status of Canards Grave Road as an A road and being part of Somerset's freight network. So this just shows the angles and required dimensions from a highway safety perspective, and the Highway Authority are satisfied with the proposal subject to conditions securing the improvements and through the 106. So this shows the location of the proposed bus stop and the entrance into the site through Dark Lane, just south of the improved crossing. This is the primary access for the care home site. The proposal shows the required widths, gradients and visibility displays in accordance with a 40-mile-an-hour speed. And the vehicular crossing access to the southeast corner of the site, which shows 2 island crossing points across the primary street and across Canards Grave Road, with sufficient width for a right turn lane when coming from the north. So this shows the pedestrian and cycle connection point from Compton Road, which would run alongside the existing private drive that serves the existing residential property. And nearly opposite the junction of Compton Road and Middleton Lane, the internal layout is suggesting a turning head for vehicles, but would maintain a pedestrian connection and provision for tactile paving at the crossing. So this slide shows the continuation of the footway cycleway to the south of the site, up to the right-hand turn just before Canards Grave roundabout. So again, during the briefing, it was questioned whether grass verges could be used to separate pedestrians and cyclists from traffic along Canards Grave Road. According to Manual for Streets guidance, this would result in faster vehicle speeds due to the psychological impact of the separation. So the current arrangement provides the current standards with a 0.5 buffer, which is marked by a white line set back from the carriageway edge, which has been found acceptable through an independent safety audit and 2 rounds of safety audits by the Highway Authority. So following members' briefing, clarification was requested on whether the scheme proposed a cycleway across a field owned by Duchy of Cornwall from Church Lane and along the A37, which is towards Whitstone Corner roundabout to the south of the development and east along Whitstone Lane, effectively connecting into another safeguarded sustainable transport corridor, which heads towards Evercreech and Castle Carey. It has been agreed with the development developer that there will be a safeguarded strip of land which is owned by the Duchy, so it's outside of the red outline of this development, and that will be safeguarded for future footway cycleway between Church Lane and the A37 to enable that to come forward. So this will be secured through the Section 106 and would enable the delivery of the missing connection point to enable this link. There was also pressure for an additional contribution, so £25,000 has also been secured in addition to the heads of terms that were already agreed, which is proposed to be used towards wider active travel links, so could be used in contribution with the land to deliver that link. So the question was raised in respect of adaptability of the accommodation being proposed, and in terms of the heads of terms for the legal agreement, 2 of the affordable properties are required to comply with Part M4 Category 3, which is to enable wheelchair users. Condition 7 also requires 10% of the dwellings to be built in accordance with Part M4 Category 2. So these are all building regulation requirements. To ensure that they're accessible and adaptable. This is proposed to be split 50-50 between the market and affordable dwellings, and Condition 18 has been imposed to ensure that full details of bike storage is provided at reserve matters stage. And there was discussion about permitted development rights, but removal of those would be for a matter for approval of reserve matters, so for future applications, not really appropriate for this application. So in terms of local response to consultation, as set out earlier, the application has been referred to committee on the request of the Chief Planning Officer, as Shepton Mallet Town Council supported the application, but have raised some queries regarding the above. So these are all covered in detail in the report, controlled by condition or through the 106, and are set out in the presentation. So flood and water management has already been covered. The development is not required to deliver 10% biodiversity net gain, but it does deliver significant structural and biodiversity landscaping, which has resulted in no net loss. Additionally, information was received in respect of ecological reports. Connectivity has been covered. Parking within the site would be a matter for reserve matters because that would come down to the layout. And the location of the NEEP again, is a reserve matters point because the location isn't fixed by this application. There is a construction management plan which is controlled by condition, and the community centre is covered in full on page 106 within the report, but it is an additional requirement for the site that's come through the adoption of the neighbourhood plan. This site does provide facilities set out in the Mendip local plan, in terms of providing a mixed-use development for the community. Within the neighbourhood plan, there is a policy that lists all nearby community centres or spaces to meet. So given the provision of these within the wider area, whilst there would be a conflict with this site not delivering a community building, it is considered that the development as a whole is broadly in accordance with the other elements of the local plan and the adopted policy. So in terms of third-party comments, over the lifetime of the development, which as set out earlier is quite a long time, the council have received 50 letters that object to the scheme, of which 15 were in respect to the consultation earlier this year. So then in terms of heads terms, I've just spread this over a number of slides because there's quite a few of them. So affordable housing, they are providing policy compliant affordable housing offer of 30%. There are also 2 options for the education provision and financial contributions for SEND and healthcare provision on this slide. So in respect to the school, it's an either or clause. So they can either design and build the school on site as identified by the parameter plan, or they can transfer a serviced site to the council and provide us with contributions. So that's why there's an option 1, option 2 on that one. So in terms of highway and active travel, the highway works are quite significant. They are listed here in full and are set out in detail as part of the officer's report. But effectively to the north of the development, there is provision of a parallel crossing connection to active travel links on the A371, sorry. There's the proposed roundabout at Littlebrooks Lane, provision of the roundabout onto Canards Grave Road, and provision of a northern access to the development and Littlebrooks Lane. Parallel pedestrian and cycle crossing, including visibility displays and associated connecting footways and cycleways. A southern junction to the development, and ghost right-hand turn lane, junction visibility and uncontrolled crossing points. There is a care home access separate to the main accesses to the site, and a bus stop being provided. From Compton Road, there's provision of a short section of active travel link from the development to Compton Road and an uncontrolled crossing point and short footway onto Compton Road. Provision of a short section of cycleway footway from the development to Compton Road. There's the Canards Grave footway cycleway and other active travel measures such as resurfacing of Dark Lane to bring it up to a higher standard, and diverting the public right of way. And as mentioned earlier, there's an additional contribution towards wider off-site delivery and safeguarded land now for the footway and cycle connection point between Church Lane and the A37. There's an active travel plan. There's a connectivity plan, as shown earlier, which would be secured through the 106. Public open spaces would be secured through the 106, and sport facilities contributions in terms of off-site contributions for a mugger, which is £281,934. And then commercial centre, we would also be looking at local labour agreements, phosphate mitigation, which is the following of some of the site while they develop the first phases, and provision of credits for the remaining. And the delivery of the drainage scheme will be secured through the 106, in addition to monitoring fees. So in terms of planning harm, so as mentioned earlier, any application needs to be balanced, harm against benefits. It is redevelopment of a greenfield site, so there will be harm. The harms resulting as a part of this scheme is the local, the impact on local wildlife, such as bats and birds. Although Somerset Ecology Services and Natural England have confirmed that this has been adequately mitigated for and would be controlled by condition and 106. There would be a loss of 53 acres of agricultural fields, which is value 3B in terms of agricultural quality. But the loss of this land has previously been accepted through the allocation of the site, primarily through the Mendip local plan and then subsequently through the neighbourhood local plan, and it is providing an allocation for mixed use housing scheme. There are low level, so less than substantial harms to Shipton Mallet Conservation Area and the listed field inn and field cottages. That's as a result of the loss of that land to development. There would also be short-term disturbance to residential amenity during the construction period, but we are looking to mitigate and control that through the use of conditions. So in terms of the balance for the benefits, it would result in delivery of up to 120 houses. It delivers a policy compliant provision for affordable housing, including 2 wheelchair accessible properties, employment space of an appropriate scale, creating job opportunities longer term and during the construction period. There's provision of a primary school and nursery, provision of a care home, provision of a range of public and open spaces and play areas, creation of active travel links into the town and the surrounding area. There would be betterments in terms of surface water management, off-site contributions towards GP surgeries, off-site contributions to sports facilities, and off-site contributions towards active travel links and the safeguarding of the link between Church Lane and the A37. So as such, the recommendation is for approval. It's requested that the recommendation is to delegate authority to the head of planning. This is because we still need the reservation certificate for the phosphate mitigation, and we need to work on and sign up the 106. So subject to those two things happening, it's recommended for approval, subject to the conditions as set out in the officer's report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. A long and detailed report to us on this significant scheme, which has been in the making for, I guess, 6-7 years, if not longer. Right, I have a number of speakers here. The first one is Mr. Robert Horton. Would you like to come and join us at the table? You will have 3 minutes and the officer will indicate to you, I think, 30 seconds to the end, so you can wind up.
No, thank you, Chair. And can I just say, reiterate what you said about Mike this morning? I knew Mike. I've worked on the Standards Committee for 10 years now with County and with Somerset Council, and I came across Nick quite a few times, and yeah, sad loss. So yes, certainly he'll be sorely missed. As you know, the Chapter 8 Neighbourhood Plan went through referendum successfully a couple of months ago. I sent round my slides to you over the weekend. You'll have them in front of you. Unfortunately, we can't throw the slides up onto the screen, but you'll have seen them. Essentially, we need to look at this plan through the prism of the neighbourhood plan now. Neighbourhood plan obviously fully supports this development. You know, we're in a slightly unique situation in Shepton Mallet, as you know. Other towns in the former Mendip area like Frome, all the places with major transport hubs, Frome, Wells with a bus station, have had a lot of housing come forward for them. We have the opposite problem in that we've kind of been waiting for our scheme to come forward for a number of years, and this is the strategic site that was allocated in Mendip Plan, Local Plan Part 2. So it's fully supported in the town in terms of development, providing much needed housing in the town. But what has happened and what we are concerned about, because the neighbourhood plan has obviously a number of policies, but also has a design guide that runs parallel to it. You'll see, if you look at the illustrative master plan, and the slides that I sent to you, essentially what's happened since 2015, this application has kind of been squeezed. The number of houses have increased from 500 to 620, and obviously the way to achieve an extra 120 houses is by squeezing all the green space, making all the gardens smaller or removing them, changing the parking arrangements, and generally having quite a major impact on the placemaking of this particular scheme. And what we would like to do, we've had one attempt at meeting with the Duchy to ask them to allocate a little bit of extra land. They own all of this extra land here that doesn't form part of the Mid Somerset Show Field. The neighbourhood plan site allocation is here, which is something the neighbourhood plan has sort of allocated for 150 houses. So there is great scope for the housing to extend further south and further west. And in fact, those of you who remember early iterations of Mendip Plan Part 2, this was in fact allocated as an expansion area for the development itself, but that was just taken out at the last minute before it went to the inspector. So that ground to the south, and obviously our allocation neighbourhood plan to the west, has always been indicatively allocated for housing. And what we would like is another opportunity, a deferral for a couple of months, to give us an opportunity to talk to the Duchy for a second time, to ask them to allocate a bit more ground for this development so that we can get back a little bit more of the placemaking, more of the green spaces, and a little bit of a better sense of place. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Horton. We now move on to Richard Thomas. listed as an interested party, so welcome anyway.
Thank you, Chair, very much. Just for clarification, I speak as the outgoing chairman of the Shepton Mallet Neighbourhood Plan team, and thank you very much for the opportunity. As Robin has said, the Neighbourhood Plan strongly supports this development. In Shepton, we need these houses, both to meet our commitment to local and national housing, but also to support the town's urgent need for economic regeneration. There's one thing that I do have a reservation about, though. I don't think it's right for planners to pick out from the neighbourhood plan those things that they find convenient and to disregard those things they find inconvenient. If I could just read to you policy 2A, proposals for the development of Cannocksgrave strategic site will be supported where they're compliant with local plan policy CP9A, and in particular, the requirement to deliver the following community facilities where appropriate for the needs of the development. Community play park, well, largely in there. What's missing is a community building with meeting rooms, social and health facilities, which may be provided as part of or adjoining the local centre and should be designed to benefit from potential links and dual use with adjoining community facilities and open space provision. Those of you familiar with the town, I'm sure you will realise that we actually have no publicly owned community buildings. We also have next door an estate in Tadley Acres, which was promised a community building, which was never delivered. The health of a community depends on the availability for those residents to come together for all sorts of meetings, to get together for clubs, societies, organisations. This can no longer be done in schools because of the necessary protections that are in place. So we need these community buildings. The ones that the planners referred to are some distance from this site. They are all privately owned, and we've seen recently what can happen with privately owned community facilities. So they can be used at a whim for anything else. We've lost our leisure centre for that reason in Shepton Mallet. So I'm asking now, as we consider this outline proposal, that we put down a marker with the developers who've been quite resistant up until now for this, that a community building with meeting rooms, social and health facilities should not just be included, but should be at the centre of our thinking of how we care for the families, the children, the community that we're going to build in this place. We shouldn't be just concerned about buildings, but also about the people. That's my concern, I think, that I bring to you at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Thomas. That's helpful. Move on now to Mr. Fletcher Robinson from CPRE. Somerset.
Is this microphone on? Yes, thank you. Well, CPRE Somerset would like to express our support for this attractive scheme in Shepton Mallet. There's a detailed illustrative master plan which we feel confident will be delivered with integrity and without major changes, including the affordable housing provisions. The master plan, in our mind, indicates that the site layout, building massing and heights, protection of the majority of existing trees, and a generous and fair distribution of open space have all been carefully considered as part of the design process. We recently opposed the SGC scheme in Frome, where, in our opinion, none of that was on the table. And furthermore, the SGC scheme was far from the town centre. There was a lack of connectivity, and in our opinion, the scale was harmful to the rural setting of Frome. None of that applies in this case. We like the attractively landscaped Central Park running north-south through the scheme with generous space for informal recreation and the retention of landscape features such as the distinctive stone barn. It deserves the name park, unlike many schemes that use such words. There is generous provision of different kinds of public open spaces distributed throughout the scheme, ranging from the Central Park to public greens, community orchard, and different kinds of play spaces. The showground will be a community resource when not being used for the annual show. The scheme also makes meaningful connections to the town centre, to residential areas on both sides, and to the countryside. We were pleased to see the recent letter confirming that the Duchy will commit in perpetuity to providing a cycle route connection with the open countryside to the south. In our opinion, what is needed, perhaps, well, what is needed is a safe, controlled crossing closer to Collett Park. We think that really is essential, and we hope it can be provided. To conclude, we think this scheme will be a great place to live, and that it will do wonders for the regeneration of Shepton, and we strongly recommend approval today.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. We now move on to Councillor Jane Nicklin from Shepton Town Council. Welcome.
Good morning. A lot of what I was going to say has been covered in great detail, but I think the last point made about the connectivity is one of the ones that we're most worried about. We want to make sure this, I think, good opportunity is not lost. We need to make sure that we connect the town fully with this community. They mustn't be a satellite community. And it is that crossing that leads over to the park and on to the senior school that matters. It has to be somewhere that's safe, that people can connect through to. And you know what children are like. If they've got a crossing 200 metres down the road, they're not going to use that. They're going to attempt to cross where they come out from the estate. So I would like Highways to use some imagination along with the developers to build something that is safe and good for people to cross over there, not only to get over to the park and to the school and the rest of the town, but to the multi-user pathways that we have all supported. So I think that is our key point, one of our key points we'd like to get over. Secondly, the flooding issue. Yes, they've done a lot to mitigate the flooding and done excess to mitigate what's coming off at the top, at the bottom end. We want to make sure that we go above and beyond in terms of flooding mitigation, because down further in the town, a lot of the runoff has an impact on the rest of the town. I know that's outside of the planning for this particular application. We want and would request that you look further into how it affects the town. So that's really, really important. And thirdly, we'd very much like to be involved in onward discussions. I don't believe we were invited to that briefing, and I think it would have been helpful for us to be there to put forward our local knowledge. And I'd like to be involved, or we would like to be involved, should I say. I'm Chair of Town Development Planning, to be part of that, and S106 discussions. We are very supportive of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Nicklin. And our final speaker on this application is Nick Guilford, Senior Plan Manager from CG Fry and Sons, the applicant.
Good morning. Is this on? Yeah. Good morning, members. My name is Nick Guilford. I'm a Senior Planning Manager at CG Fry and Son, joint applicant with the Duchy of Cornwall Estate. CG Fry is an independent house builder with a passion and strong reputation for delivering exceptional quality, both in relation to the homes we build and the places we create. As a regional developer, our reputation and brand are essential to our ongoing success, our core aim being to create places that we and the local community can be proud of for generations to come. And our example in Somerset is our award-winning Jerson Fields development in Wellington. Others include Nansledden in Cornwall and Poundbury in Dorset, both of which feature in the government's National Design Code as examples of high quality development. Just related to that point, I wanted to pick up on the comments made earlier in relation to density and approach to design and suggestion we need to include more land. We would counter that. We have done this well on other schemes, and actually we need to make best use of land and not producing more greenfield development, more greenfield land development. The application and recommendation before you are the culmination of over 8 years of close working with your officers, consultees and the local community following the council's allocation of the site for development in 2014. Our engagement included a series of drop-in events and community workshops in 2016 and 2017, attended by over 450 stakeholders ahead of the planning application submission in 2018. In addition to the council's own consultation processes, the Somerset Quality Review Panel also considered the proposals and supported them in November 2023. Various amendments have been made in response to comments over that period, culminating in the package of proposals and infrastructure investment set out within your officer's report. Subject to the committee endorsing the officer's recommendations, the proposed development provides the opportunity to facilitate significant benefits for the local area, including provision of up to 620 new homes, with, despite significant recent increases in costs of education and other contributions, 30% affordable housing, a new primary school and nursery, over 7 hectares of public open space, representing 25% of the development area, £11.5 million of investment in infrastructure through a combination of financial contributions and on-site delivery. This includes around £700,000 of active travel measures, as well as the safeguarding of land to facilitate future provision of an off-site cycle link. The £11.5 million figure actually rises to around 46 million when you're allowing for the cost of the affordable housing provision. The proposals are supported by the Town Council and subject to no objections from any technical consultees. Demonstrative of the extensive consultation that I have summarised, there have been only 50 objections from residents over the course of the application process, just 0.4% of the population of Shepton Mallet, versus the 620 households who benefit from a new place to call home, the social foundation of a healthy life. We look forward to working further with stakeholders to deliver this important scheme for the area, a development that will bring with it extensive social benefits, a development that will contribute significantly to the council's housing land supply, bolstering its ability to resist other proposals in less sustainable locations that are not, as is the case with this site, allocated in the council's local plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Guildford.
Okay, thank you. I've actually got 4 points to make. So what I'd like to do is just make 2 of them now and ask the chair if I can come back later and be allowed to speak again. So my 4 concerns are flooding and drainage, what actually we're going to pin down in terms of the perimeter blocks, because I'm a bit concerned about this courtyard parking. And the other 2 issues were around highways and landscape and open spaces, but I won't talk about all those now. So just starting off with flooding and drainage. I do understand, looking at the topography, how I can see why there might be flooding on Canard's Grave Road because of, and that goes down in towards the conservation area. And I can see the logic of putting those attenuation ponds there. I'm just wondering, I haven't actually checked on the conditions, if there is a condition about having porous, it says something about the council wishes to see all measures are taken to enable management of water runoff, including porous driveways, hard surfaces and flood protection measures. Are we actually asking for permeable paving on some of these, in some of this courtyard parking areas or around the site? Are we getting permeable paving? Also, I do not see at all anywhere in here the mention of water butts, and I'd like to ask if we can have a condition where water butts are included to also reduce surface water runoff when we get intense rainfall in the future going forward. There's somebody somewhere, it might have been the parish council, said there were springs on the site, and then it was categorically said in here that there were not springs on the site. I actually walked around the site yesterday. I observed a spring. I actually walked up Dark Lane, which was dry, and then I suddenly got to a muddy bit, and I walked up past the muddy bit, and there you could actually see the water coming out from underground, and then you went past that and it was dry again. There are springs on the site. So I think that the town council have asked that a detailed third-party independent report is commissioned that not only assesses water management from this development but puts it in a wider context of the town, and I would like to see that. And if we do go for a deferral here, I don't know if that's something that the town council still wants, but that is something that I would, and whether they have actually commissioned it or whether that's something that our council has to commission. I'm not quite sure how that would work. So that's on flooding. There was a couple of other things on flooding. Oops, hang on, which was I actually thought that in terms of the negotiations with Wessex Water, that's good. I mean, I wish that we'd had that in Frome. They've actually been talking directly to Wessex Water and looking at the foul drainage, which needs to be really looked at, and Wessex Water onto it. And they're coming forward with proposals already, looking at cumulative effect. I mean, I think that's actually a very positive thing. I wasn't quite sure. Yeah, integrate local drainage with systems of river catchment as a whole. I've already sort of said that. And the last thing on flooding and drainage, sorry, it kept popping up at different points in the paper. Oh, I've written down water butts, in very big letters. And it says in the conditions, I think, or in the officer report, that was just about the springs. So that was the flooding and drainage point. With regard to the perimeter blocks, I kept seeing contradictory things in the paper about the fact that it's an illustrative master plan. I looked at the original, I went onto the planning portal and I looked at the original master plan that was suggested. And on that, the blocks down at the bottom, you can see all along the bottom of the development there, the blocks along there, they were sort of like square blocks. They all had on-street parking and they had long gardens at the back. So you would have been able to go into your back garden and hear the sound of children playing or someone having a barbecue or whatever in the summer. Right now, what's been proposed after this design review panel came forward in November 2023, right? This design review panel, who are they? Right, 5 people. Right, they have come forward and I don't know if it's their idea or if it was the developer's idea. And suddenly what they want to do is, instead of having nice long gardens, big gardens, they're going to halve those big gardens and have these parking lots behind the houses. And that means that you're going to have cars moving around in front of your house and cars moving around behind your house, driving, a parking or whatever. That's supposed to be a shared space also with children to be able to play. It's going to increase the amount of tarmac and hard surfaces on the whole site. That is going to increase the likelihood of surface water not being able to permeate down through. I'm really not happy with those parking lots at the back, and I've only just looked at this morning the submission that the town council sent round, and they don't seem to be happy with that either. So again, if this is deferred, I would like to see that looked at. Now, what I'm not clear about is in this paper, quite often it says layout will be decided at reserved matters, but then there's a whole big section where it sort of says that the design guide might well include a section about these blocks with this parking at the back. Is that going to be fixed at this meeting today, or is it not going to be fixed? And also, is it going to be fixed whilst we're talking about what is fixed and what isn't? I personally, when I get old, will not want to go into a care home that's on a main road. There's going to be far more traffic on this A road as a result of this development. I would actually, as an ex-teacher, certainly not want to be working in a primary school that's on a main road that's got big traffic, that's got lorries going down it. I just wonder if also those facilities are fixed. Is it also fixed that we're not going to have a community centre, or is that something that still could be up for negotiation? So that's got a lot of detail, I know, and that's why I wanted to split it into 2 halves, and I'd like to have a second bite at the cherry later in the meeting, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kay. Would you like to respond to her initial question?
Thank you. Right, so as an outline application, we need enough information submitted with the application to demonstrate to us that it can deliver what it's saying it's going to deliver. So in terms of the allocation of the site in the local plan, which was what this site was delivered and developed against, the local plan required it to have residential, it requires it to have open space, it requires it to have a commercial area, it requires it to have a primary school. It doesn't require a nursing home, but that is what came forward with it to help its sort of lay out the
Sorry, my question is about the location of those things, not the actual principle of it.
But this is coming back to your community building point. So in terms of what it needs to do to meet the local plan, Mendip neighbourhood plan, Mendip local plan policy is all on there. There is a conflict with the neighbourhood plan that became policy in August this year. So literally a few weeks before this became before members. The conflict in the neighbourhood plan is set out in detail. So it's not that officers ignore it. It's set out in detail on page 106. And in the neighbourhood plan, there is a list that is about a page and a half long of surrounding community facilities within the vicinity. So as such, officers didn't feel that they could, at this point so late in the game, push back and say, actually, remove the care home, remove the nursing home, we want a community building. The viability has all been done based on the uses that they've been set out. So this plan, this is a land use parameter plan. So as you will see, it's not detailed in terms of blocks. It's not detailed in terms of parking arrangements. It's not detailed in terms of how they are going to achieve 620, because that's part of the next application. What this says is that generally in the beige areas, they're going to build some residential development. That plan is not controlled as part of this application. On condition 2, on page 119, it does list the approved plans, and the approved plans are the technical highway documents that show the connection points that we've been talking about, because access is a detailed matter for this application. The rest of it is information that they have to give us to satisfy us that they can, in principle, provide this amount of development and these types of development within those locations.
Could you put the master plan back up again, please? I don't know if that's you, Claire.
So the
because that shows, the master plan shows in a sort of a beigey brown colour. There you can see, yeah, that one.
Yeah.
If you look at this colour here, these are all parking lots, which were not there before.
Okay,
So
that plan is not controlled by this application.
Okay, thank you for the reassurance. Thank you.
It could look like that, or they could build blocks of flats, or they could deliver it in any other way. But so that plan and that layout is just indicative for them to say, I could fit this many units on this space in this form. And it's those indicative ideas that were given to the quality review panel, and they fed back on the design ideas, but the layout and the form and everything gets secured through the next application.
Okay, well, I hope that the developers have heard my reservations about that. Thank you.
Yeah.
The question about the flooding and the drainage that I...
Yes, so again, apologies, that's why I was that way looking for that plan for you. In terms of drainage, they had to give us enough information that we were happy. Bear with, I just want to find the right slide for you. So this was the top end of the site. This was the bottom end of the site. So because there's more information on the top end, I'll go back to that and stay on that for a second. So in terms of the outline application, it was known that there's, there are wet areas within this site, and that would need to be accommodated for, that would need to be understood, and that would need to be planned for in terms of where you think you're going to have your drainage, where you think you're going to have your green space, and how that's going to accommodate for the development. So this scheme has put forward the preliminary drainage layout. So they're saying, if we developed it in this way, in this form, it would result with X amount of surface water runoff, which would need to be put somewhere, held somewhere, and then discharged at an appropriate rate. So this is almost the first technical calculation for the layout they're currently presenting. And any amendments to any future layout would also have to demonstrate it can be appropriately drained in accordance with reducing flood risk. So this is enough information to demonstrate the indicative layout they've given us, and the indicative areas of hard standing could all be designed for and accommodated within the confines of the site and result in betterment outside of the site.
So my suggestion for water butts and permeable paving are they things that we can add now as conditions, or are they things that come at reserve matters?
They would come at reserve matters. That said, we have put on a condition requiring details of bike storage. So if members were particularly keen on water butts, I can add water butts into that condition so that you can see when and where they're going in, if it was really, really important for members, but I would suggest it's a reserve matters point.
Okay, thank you. And what about the fact that that Shepton Mallet Town Council asked for a detailed third-party independent report? Is that they asked that can be commissioned? Is that something that they would do or something that we would do? And would I need to put a motion forward for that?
It's not. I would say it's not within the gift of this application. This application came with a detailed drainage scheme, a detailed drainage proposal that's been gone through by the Lead Local Flood Authority. It's been gone through by Wessex. It's been gone through by all the relevant water bodies and has been agreed as acceptable. So there's no reason for me to consider that there's an issue with the information we've got.
But we've just said it was a preliminary drainage layout. We're not sure yet. We haven't got all the details yet, have we?
No, which would follow with the reserve matters applications. So they have given us enough to demonstrate they can do it. And when we get the detail of actually what's going where and how they're going to do it, that detail may change slightly.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sorry I've taken up so much time, but I would like to come back later. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Helen, and thank you for some helpful questions. Right, I think I have a deadbeat, a tie. So shall we go to Barry and then on to Martin?
Thank you, Chair. Just to go back to Dawn's point just then about the water butts, we had a meeting with Wessex Water not very long ago, some of us, and they are really, really keen on every property having a water butt, because it's water that doesn't go down the drains. They can't make you do it, but you certainly should do it. That was just off the record. My main concern is we've gone from a nice development of 500 houses and we've gone to 620 houses. And to use Fry's planner's comments, we've squeezed. So we've got more and more out of the available land that we've got. And I think that the densities we're talking about here of the dwellings, which is very close to the limit of 30 dwellings per hectare, they managed to get 29.76 on the accommodation areas. That strikes me as being too high. And the developments that I'm used to were back in the old Avon County when they were doing developments at 10 to the acre, which is 23 to the hectare. And you've got nice wide roads that buses can get along, that vehicles can come down comfortably, cars can pass comfortably. And you get the impression that, well, there's a bit of open space about this. You're not living right on top of somebody else. This has been squeezed almost to the extreme. And I think Fry's could do a much nicer job. And we don't want to get hijacked because the Prince, because it's the Duchy of Cornwall, and Fry's because they've got this little thing going on and they've done good work elsewhere, which I agree with. But I would like to see them do good work here, not because it's Shepton Mallet and they need 620 houses. 500 houses would be a good starting off point. I've spoken about the width of the roads. I suspect these roads are going to be a bit tight for things like, I know buses don't go down. We've had this conversation before, but vehicles go down, fire engines have to go down, ambulances have to go down, oil delivery lorries have to go down, and all of them have to be catered for. And when we've done this squeezing, they may not be as wide roads as they started off being. So there's a delivery lorry there, the cars might have to wait to go by. I don't know. We've only got an illustrative plan, which doesn't really mean very much. We don't know what these houses are going to look like at all. Are they going to be built of bricks? Are they going to be built of stone? Are they going to be nice looking? We have no idea. The other point, or another point, at the very beginning of Dawn's presentation, the application was for 620 houses and land for a school. But then it went on to say it was actually a school. Are we getting a school as an immutable condition that the builder cannot get out of, whether he pays for it or whether he builds it? Is it actually going to happen? And I'm minded to quote Tadley Acres yet again. where they had land for school. They didn't build it. And I think back last summer, might have been this, no, it was last summer, I believe, Somerset Council had to find in excess of £500,000 to do a capital project at St Paul's School because of lack of schooling. Now, all that could have been done by the builder at Tadley Acres if the planning had said, these are your conditions and you stick to them. Oh, thank you. Not come along halfway through the application, say, oh, we've had a good idea. Perhaps we could change it a little bit. And we say, yeah, you can change it. I absolutely disagree. Once they've got permission to do something, they must do it. And the planning department must condition them to do it. So there's no wriggle room. And Mr. Thomas from the group that put together the development plan for Shepton Mallet, he made the point about the community building. Now, I understood at one stage the stone barn that was going to be left there was going to be the community building. But now that seems to have disappeared because we can get a few more houses in. I would suggest if we went back to 500 houses, Mr. Thomas could have his community area. And to say that there are other community facilities within reach of what? Walking, bicycles, cars, coaches, I don't know. They need to be on that site so that that site becomes an integrated community, as Mr. Thomas pointed out. And the last thing, Dawn said that we would look into removing permitted development rights. If we're going to have 620 houses up here where perhaps originally we all thought there were going to be 500, permitted development rights surely must be taken away. I know it's not a question for this committee, but they surely must be taken away because all this squeezing is at the expense of gardens and green space and lawns. And by the time you've got the little, I call them scratty little gardens, which is what they'll be. And by the time you've got your obligatory conservatory and a shed and the kids' play toys, there is nothing left anymore to do any sensible growing of your own food and have a nice open space. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Can I just remind people this is an outline planning application and we will have reserved matters in due course, which will allow us to have that conversation further. Does the officer want to respond to your question?
Thank you. Yeah, so just in terms of density, we did have the density plan. I did flash it up for members during the presentation. So it does fall below the 30 dwellings per hectare, which is a recognisably acceptable density for built up residential areas. I know it's currently a big green space. It is an allocated site for housing. So in that respect, it is below the 30 dwellings per hectare, but the site also benefits from a large amount of green space, particularly to the bottom of the site, but also the green corridor going up and through. And that would be retained as part of the structural green landscaping for the site. In terms of the widths, there was a plan that I showed earlier in terms of the road hierarchies. There is a main route coming in where the roundabout is, looping through and coming back out the bottom. That is considered to be acceptable for buses potentially, but again, we don't have the detailed layout because that's further applications. In terms of the stone barn, it's quite a modest stone barn and it's got bats in it. So it's proposed to retain that stone barn in its setting to be bat mitigation because that was considered to be of greatest value for the site. And permitted development would be an approved matter issue because it depends on the detail of what the development looks like as to whether it's appropriate to remove permitted development rights. Thank you.
Thank you. We then move on to Martin.
Thank you. Thanks, Dawn. That was a very thorough and good presentation. And I'd like to come back on, Barry's just touched on this, but I just need a bit more detail about the education provision. Can you clarify for me, because I'm now confused, does that mean they will leave a space for the school? I've got two questions on this. Does that mean they will leave a space for the school, which then we have to build, or will they build the exterior of the school and then we have to do the rest? Because there are different ways of doing this, aren't there?
Yeah, so the requirement for the school is given to us by our estates colleagues. So they do the calculation. They say for this development of this scale, you need a school. So as part of the allocation, they need to provide a school. It's actually shown here as the white land there in that little rectangular block up there. So that's where the school is proposed to go. It's not conditioned, it's in the 106. So it's a legal requirement for that school to be delivered currently within the 106. There are two options for the developer. So the developer can either design, build it and deliver it themselves and then give us a fully functional school building at the end of it, or they service the land, which means they put drains, they put electricity, they put all the services that we would need to plug into it, and they give us quite a substantial fee in terms of then it's down to us to build the development. Which option they take is up to them, but either way we either get a fully constructed delivered school provided by the developer as controlled through the 106, or we get a fully serviced site and enough contribution to develop the building at our own time as and when we need it. So that's the requirement in the 106 at the moment, and that's what the estates colleagues have signed off on.
That's great. If I could just ask a supplementary to that then. So do we know what the projected figures for Shepton are in terms of schools? Because I'm assuming this site will actually provide a lot more young people coming through. But if the rest of the town is declining, we'll get a situation as we've had in Frome, for example, where the school doesn't get built because actually the pupils are soaked up somewhere else. And we end up sending the pupils that the children that live here into central Shepton rather than building a school there. Have we got projected figures that suggest this school will be built in the fullness of time?
The detail of that is all within the estates officer's comment, because that's what they do when they give us a planning comment. They go through what the projection is for school places in so many years, what the school places we've got, what capacity those school places have got, and in some cases where existing school places are being outsourced to other locations. So if people are going from Shepton to somewhere else, that's all set out in the balance of the comment. And then the comment specifies what we need to do about it. So in this case, it's delivery of a school site within that site of that area, and either direct delivery through the developer or provision of the service site to us as a local authority, and then we deliver it with the contribution that's provided. So I don't have them to hand, but they are on the case and they are in the estates officer's comments.
Thank you.
Thank you. Move on to Steve.
Thank you. I appreciate this is primarily reserved matters, but the N4 category 3 numbers in here, the 2 single houses, that does appear to be proportionally very low compared with the national average for substantial wheelchair users, which is over 1%. So is it suggesting that locally we have very much less than the national average of wheelchair users, or have I got something wrong here?
So in terms of the requirement, you're right, it's only 2 to be wheelchair adapted. So they are properties that someone in a wheelchair can move into immediately. 10% of the development needs to be constructed in accordance with a different building reg standard, but that does require them to be constructed in a way that makes them accessible, so lifetime homes. So they could be retrofitted to include that. So it is unfortunate that it's only 2 for the development, but it's normally not something we would look at planning stage. It's something that members raised specifically as a concern, which is why it's gone in as a condition, requiring it specifically for 2 of the dwellings, and then 10% for the other standard, but the other standard can be then made accessible if needed.
Okay. We then move on to Claire and then Dawn.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Dawn, for your presentation. Obviously, maybe we take it for granted how much work goes into these presentations, but so much work clearly went into that presentation. we have a job to do here today, and we have narrow legal parameters. But rightly so, there's a conversation going on, and that was also the case in our members' briefing, which I came out of that members' briefing with a spring in my step, and I wished people could have heard the sentiment, which was what an opportunity this is for Shepton, and we need to make it a really beneficial, positive step for now and for the future. And Shepton has incredible potential, and I don't think that potential is waiting to be unlocked. I think it's actively being unlocked by a dedicated community and stakeholders like the town council, and who are all eager to drive this positive change. And this is this wider conversation, and this was what we were talking about in the members' briefing. And I've witnessed the renewal of towns and areas like Frome and Bedminster and Bristol, where community-led regeneration sparks hope, pride, and economic vitality. But I've seen where there's a lack of cultural heart, a cultural heart, and it hampers opportunities and investment. And that manifests itself in a physical space, a hub that inspires ideas and supports local initiatives and acts as a catalyst for growth. And as I say, it attracts investment. I can see that the community here is eager to drive its own destiny, and things are already happening in respect of that. And councils are here not just to support, actually are to empower. So I want to reiterate that this is an opportunity to have this conversation on top of what we have to legally do around a community hub and centre. Shepton is disadvantaged with no town hall or significant community space, a loss of a leisure centre. But the town is already working on this, so I want to use this platform to say to the developer and to the people that are investing in this housing to look at what's already going on in the town and see what you can do to help the town enable itself to get a community centre. It makes sense to do this together, not as two separate things. So please look at what they're doing in the centre of the town at the moment and where you could help, I think, with small change for the investor here. So please look at that. I'll say the A word, the amulet. Am I wrong to say how unusual it is to hear things like this is an attractive scheme? This has been carefully considered. So that was really good to hear, that being said. But I also have concerns about the number of housing that's already been raised. But I think it's going to be tricky because there's things that are beyond our tight parameters of what we can agree to and what we can say. We can just hope that the right decisions are made in respect of that. I just want to sort of finish on, we need to respect the voice of the town council, a key stakeholder, who say they just want a little bit more time. And I know this could be frustrating for our planning people and our planning team, but I would like to the committee to give that respect to a very active, proactive, capable town council who say, just give us 2 more months, and how we can work collaboratively with them going forward. So I would like to put on the table that we do defer for just 2 months. I know this is probably a difficulty and challenge for our planning people, but why not support the town council here who welcome this, but they just want that opportunity in that space to have conversations, to try on behalf of their public and the local community. So I'd like to put on the table that we do defer for 2 months for that to happen. And I hope a seconder will come up. Okay, thank you.
2 things, Claire. Can I be clear? Is that a proposal?
yes, it's a proposal to defer for 2 months to allow a key stakeholder who so eloquently and politely asked for just 2 months to defer, at least 2 months, but for this to come back after they are in a position with their local plan, which was ratified only recently, just to have some conversations, build those relationships, and then work collaboratively with us as members. I think we all know the direction we're going. We're almost there with this very visionary plan for Shepton. This is a once in a generation opportunity. And I really hope Shepton gets its community centre, cultural hub, and the people that are working very hard to make that happen get what they deserve.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that proposal? Thank you. Now, could I ask the officer? Yeah, can I ask the officer to talk about the practicality of what 2 months mean in terms of the planning process?
Thank you. Right, so the first thing I'm going to do is this is a bit of the neighbourhood plan. So this, it wasn't part of the presentation, so forgive me, it's not in the slide deck, but this is the neighbourhood plan. Members will be familiar now, you know, this is the triangle that we're talking about in terms of the residential development. The question was, where are these facilities relative to this site? The majority of them are clustered just north of this site, so they're very close. One of the mentioned community facilities in their list of available assets is actually the showground itself, that's provided by the site. So in looking at what the development is providing for the community, the proximity of all the other community facilities was taken into account as part of that consideration, which is why we didn't push this. You know, we have had discussions around it with the developer, but it's why we haven't pushed it further than that. The showground site is being retained. The field to the back of the showground site is being retained as part of wider community public open space. It's that area of public open space that the town council are asking about whether residential development creeps down into that area, which would then result in probably a net loss of some biodiversity. It would also result in a reduction of the community public open spaces, which was why, again, it's not something that officers have pushed back on. If I stop sharing that and then go back to the presentation, on page 106, it does say the development proposes a community orchard as part of the development. It provides open space, including a village green, play facilities, off-site contributions towards healthcare and sports facilities, also benefiting the community. There's also the primary school in terms of what's coming forward, and the community building where, and given the existing spaces for the community to meet in the town, it wasn't considered reasonable to ask for more. The community commercial hub can be used for whatever commercial uses are considered wanted or needed, which could be local startup units, it could be a cafe, it could be any of those units when it comes forward. But until it comes forward, you know, we cannot specify it is not in and of itself a community centre, because that doesn't have a viable use. If you're looking at losing floor space of this development, it would affect the viability, which would then negatively impact on the contributions that have otherwise been sought as part of this development. So following the briefing that we've had with members, we have done one final last push in terms of trying to get the most we can get out of this scheme. And part of that is a £25,000 contribution, which we are hoping to deliver the missing segment of the footpath link to a wider connective route with. But in the event it gets pushed back, in the event, you know, the finances change on the scheme, all of that changes again. It's not something that can be taken apart and put back together in 2 months. This application has been long running, and the town council have been actively engaged and providing comments and have turned up to the committee. So from an officer's perspective, we feel that there would be no benefit in deferring further, but it is for members to consider.
quickly come back to that? I totally agree with that. You have done everything you can do to get the best out of this to this point, and you listen to members, and you've come back. And I remember what Councillor White pushed a little bit more to get a little bit more out of this, and you've done that. So I can appreciate you must feel that frustration. I'm not asking for any more. I think if the town council say they need 2 more months for a constructive relationship, cementing the relationship, but you're saying that you see a risk. Do you see a risk that? See, I would think that's a pity. If we don't give them 2 months and we just come back 2 months time. So it's on the as my colleague just said to my right, it's on the table. I think I can really understand why you're probably a bit uneasy about it, but I will promise, that we will make that a smooth running planning committee in 2 months time, and I will fight to make that happen. So anyway, I still want to keep it on the table, defer for 2 months.
I'll come back when I get a chance to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Sally. I'm delighted to hear that you think you have the power to make a planning committee smooth. I would love to know where your magic wand is. Can I just trying to understand what you're proposing? Because as far as I can see, and forgive me, I've got it wrong, there has been a long-standing dialogue between the parish council and the developers, then going from outline here to actually going into reserve matters, which will require a considerable further dialogue. And what you're saying is that further dialogue needs to be delayed, and the only you would delay it is that you want the planning application to be different, and that, quite frankly, practically probably takes more than 2 months, because even if something is agreed, it then has to go through a new planning application with public consultation and whatever else. So I'm just trying to refine what you're expecting in those 2 months.
That's a really good question. I'm listening to a key stakeholder who has politely, eloquently requested just 2 months to continue important discussions about what is important for the town. And I want to respect that. For me to predict the outcome of that, I can't. It's impossible, as my colleague said. But what you're saying, and I think is really important, and what the senior planning officer has also said is really important, and I think that should be heard by the town council itself, that there's, what you can achieve in that is limited, and you don't want to derail the process. I don't know if we can speak to, unfortunately, we can speak to people in the public gallery, but
can I say that I'm sorry, the rules are quite strong. I appreciate how frustrating it is. If a councillor wants to come and have a conversation outside the room and come back, and they want to relay something, that's entirely. I shouldn't say that to you, but so far as I'm concerned, the rules are rules, I'm afraid, on that. Right. Shall we now move on to Dawn and then Suzanne?
Thank you very much. I just think this is a refreshing and really well put together application. Could you please pass on to Trudy? It was really, really good to read, because every time I had a question, it was responded to, and it was really a very good application. I also think we represent people, we represent communities, and not one of the community speakers has said that they object, and we're trying to find objections, which makes it really quite odd. I think we need to address a couple of things. First of all, the archaeology hasn't been spoken about, and as you know, that's always really important to me. The community centre, which I'm hoping will come forward in the actual application when we're looking at that. There's 2 access points that need to be considered. I think Mr. Robinson mentioned them, and so did the lady from the Shepton Mallet Town Council. Those 2 accesses for the school and Collett Park. And I also, did have written down the water butts, but I understand that that's also in the future applications. And I think the bike storage will make Ros very happy. So ultimately, I think there are just very few tweaks, but instead of us trying to find a reason to turn this down when everybody is in support of it, every paper, every representative has a small tweak, and yet we're desperately trying to find more work and push it further into the future. And I think that that's complete nonsense. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dawn. We'll move now on to Suzanne. Oh, and Polly.
Sorry, so just in terms of the archaeology conditions 42 and 43, they're just briefly mentioned on page 39, but they're in full at the back. So there was a detailed archaeological report that came in, it identified the architecture. It then said, but the works we need to do within this area can be appropriately controlled with a WSI, which would then be supervised throughout the process. So that's covered. In terms of access, there was a point I did cover off, there was a road safety audit in terms of the connection here. What I think they're actually talking about, because I originally thought it was this connection point through to the green, which had to move this way to make it safe for people to use it. So the access point on this bend was just not safe for children to be crossing at this point. So everything in the layout, in the design, is discouraging the use of that area. It's guiding all the paths through to then this area to the side. It might be that the connection point they're talking about is the other side of the green and the other side of the big park that then connects directly to the secondary school. That's not proposed as an improvement as part of this application. This application is doing a lot of direct improvements within and around the site, and then predominantly the improvements run down more to the south and then provide the connection to the south. So the one that actually connects between the green and the secondary school, that's not sort of proposed or implemented as part of this application.
Thank you for that. I'll have Suzanne, and then I'm going to say something, and I think Simon also wants to ask some questions. Suzanne?
I just feel that a huge amount of information has been given to us today, and yet in reality, the vast majority of these matters are reserved. Aside from the access, we're here purely and simply to allow in principle for 620 new houses to be built. And the details of this in reality are entirely unknown to us at this time. We are not voting on it at this time. This picture, beautiful as it is, it might be nothing like that. And I think that's maybe the fact that everyone needs to have in the forefront of their head. So what is it, when you're talking about this, I've got two questions. One is it purely and simply those two vehicle access points, or is it all of those various arrows there? Okay, so however many that is, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 access points. That's what we're actually voting on today. We're voting on 13 access points, and that in principle 620 houses can be put there. We're not being given any detail of where those houses will be, what they will look like, and therefore we do not know that there will be adequate parking for those houses. So my concern is we don't know where the vehicles for all these houses are going to go, and that we've been given all this lovely, beautiful, flowery information, all of which may or may not happen when it comes to it in reality. So I think we need to bear in the right front of our mind, this is about 13 access points and 620 houses, and it's not about anything else. Am I right or am I wrong?
No. I will ask one of the officers to respond to you.
I was just going to say, if you want to have a look at page 119, that has condition 2. Oh, sorry, Zach. That has condition 2 on it. So the detailed access points and the cycleway connection across the Canards Grave Road, that's all secured as detail as part of this application. The rest of it says all reserved matters applications shall generally accord with the following. And then it sets out these movement and access plans, the parameter plans, the landscape plans, all of those plans. So it is a general acceptance of a development of this site of 620 on the density that they've specified on the land parcels that they've shown. Historically, it's been accepted you can develop 30 dwellings per hectare and provide all the facilities that are needed. The development is 29.7. So in its current form, it could be acceptable subject to the details. But as you say, Councillor Hart, we don't have those details. So we cannot, there is nothing to suggest that there's any limitation to stop it being acceptable until we have those details. In the wide banner of can you fit 620 dwellings on this site, the information that we've had suggests it's acceptable. The detail that we're controlling is the access points, the ped and cycle connections, and the cycle connection down Cannard's Grave. And the obligations are set out in the last number of slides. They will all be secured in the 106. The shape and form and layout of the development comes later.
Could I just respond? So can I be absolute? So you're saying that 29 point something houses per hectare is normal. So at that point then, when you're telling us there's going to be 620 houses or asking us to vote in favour of 620 houses, how many parking spaces would go alongside those 620 houses? Because if you've got a figure which is 29 point something per hectare, that should also include how many parking spaces would be available with those 29 point something houses. And is it 13 access points we're voting on today, or is it a different number, please?
I think it's 14 in terms of the access, because the one bit you're missing is the main road right at the bottom hand corner. But beyond that, yes.
Thank you. So it's 14. Thank you very much. 14 access points. And do we have any kind of understanding of available parking for the property?
To comment on the parking.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Yeah, just to
have a response from.
Just to confirm, the internal layout, which will be subject to the reserve matters application as opposed to subject to this one, but it will need to be in accordance with the Somerset parking strategy. So depending on the scale of the housing, so if it's a 1-bed, 2-bed, 3-bed, 4-bed, it will need to provide the right number of parking spaces. So at this point, we don't know.
Thank you very much. So I'll go back to my original point, which was what we're actually voting on is an unknown number of parking availability to 620 houses and 14 access points. So that is what we're actually voting on. That's what, just all this chitter chatter, all this what we may or may not have, all of that comes later. And then when we say, oh, can we have this? Can we have that? You go, no, because you passed it before.
We'll have another officer's comment on yours.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from, and that is the nature of outline planning applications in a sense. But I think we do have, it's not quite as you've said, because we do have the plans list compliance, which sets out, as my colleague Dawn mentioned, that what the future reserve matters application should generally accord with. So it's not just that we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's not like back in 30 years ago when it was just literally a red line. We have got parameter plans here. We've got the illustrative master plan and parameter plans. So the land use parameter plan, the building heights parameter plan, density parameter plan, landscape parameter plan, and the illustrative master plan, all of which, if members were minded to grant permission, would need to be generally accorded with. What we can't do is require them to provide the detail at this stage because it's not a full application. So, but I do understand that the question in members' minds is, are we satisfied? And that's a very legitimate question. Are we satisfied that 620 homes can be accommodated on the site that meet all of the requirements? The officer's recommendation is that we're confident at the densities that have been shown and the information about all the facilities that will be provided, that an acceptable scheme could be delivered through reserve matters applications. But I appreciate that's a matter for members, not for us.
I mean, sorry, if I could just come back. I don't mean to be being difficult at all, In theory, I want to be able to approve this. I would love it. What I would love would be for you to be going, it actually is going to look like this, because this, what you've shown me, is great. I'm just worried that when it comes to it, this isn't what we get. And I do think it's kind of slightly, the whole, there might be a primary school, there might be some money, there might be a centre, there might not, I find that all just difficult because there are no promises. So my concern is that 620 houses may be too many, because I don't see any proper actual evidence of where they'll be and where their parking spaces will be. But what's on the table is what's on the table. So I guess unless we go and vote in favour of the proposal which is already there from Claire Sully, then our only other option is, yes, we allow them 620 houses with these 14 access points, or no, we don't.
Thank you for that. Can I just ask you to reflect on what has been said? Because there are a large number of listed plans which have been involved, and the expectation will be to have the development in accord with those plans if they were agreed. And so I will raise a couple of the questions I have on this. First of all, I'm particularly concerned about the drawing which showed where the 3 and 4 story buildings are going to be. They're towards the bottom of the site. Now, as usual, we're looking at something flat. That isn't a flat piece of ground. It's actually on rising ground, is my understanding. And I don't want us to commit the absolute cardinal sin of agreeing, as we did at the Coatsley Vineyard site, that the largest, tallest buildings are at the highest point of the site, so you can see them for forever. And so what I would like to put a mark on on it is to say, I don't think that plan in terms of where the very tallest buildings should be are right. And I would like to see a cross section of the site so you can actually see the impact on the larger landscape, because I mean, I sit the other side of Glastonbury looking out across beautiful countryside, and I see the top half of some very tall buildings at Coatsley, miles away. And I mean, I'll leave you with that thought. The second question, I suppose, given my concern about the fact that we've got a cycle path not inside the hedge, but outside the hedge on the eastern boundary. And I understand it's highways land and it's acceptable, but I just think it's a missed opportunity. Shepton Mallet Colony has an incredible number of transport companies, disproportionate. It's because of family history of the past. And so the roads have very high numbers of HGVs on them. And I just think putting a half, albeit with half a metre and all the other things, is not making it the most attractive. And it would be nice to have seen, but I know it's too late and I've lost that argument. But I'd just like to point out that going forward, I would love to see developers actually think of paths inside a hedge line where possible. And linked into that, it's been quite rightly pointed out that we have a cycle path going through the site. But we also have a 10-year, I repeat, 10-year build out. So the neighbours is not short term, it's long term. And therefore what I'm concerned about is the condition on the site, that we actually make sure that the cycle paths become available not when the last house is occupied, but from the beginning where possible. It should be right at the beginning, and they're not. Within reason. I mean, you're familiar, need to cross a road while you've got internal traffic. But the build out rate is over 10 years, that's 60 a year. And they could spend 10 years before we get the internal cycle path. And I would love to have a fairly strong condition on that one. And finally, I thank them for the additional contribution to active travel of 25,000. And I just point out that's £40 a house in comparison to I think 3,000-4,000 for school, and I think that is it's regrettable, but we are where we are on that. So coming back, the question I have is, can we make sure that the condition is strong to get the build out rate recognised and ensure that we actually have use of the path through the site from beginning? I think that would be helpful, and I will ask the developer to ensure that when we go to reserve manors, we have a cross section. So where you've got the taller buildings, but they aren't they're not just visible from within the site, but looking in, how far they can be seen. I'm sure it can be amended.
Thank you, Chair. Just very quickly, not trying to correct the Chair, but she did mention 3 and 4 story properties. Just want to make it clear that the parameter plan only goes up to 3 stories, so I didn't want hares racing there. But the point was a very important one. It would be open if that was a particular sort of sticking point at outline stage. You'll see on condition 2, it does say all future reserve matters should generally accord with the following master plan and parameter plans, and the building heights plan, so the plan there is listed as one of those. If you felt you wanted it to be left for a later date for the reserve matters, you could vote to amend that condition to take out that as one of the plans that we approve at this stage, just for the avoidance of doubt, and that could form part of the negotiations and discussions with the developers about where the taller buildings go in that context, with obviously the cross sections, etc., which we would expect at a reserve matter stage. I mean, I think if that just takes out that element of doubt of it being listed as something, because what you don't want is for at the negotiation stage at reserve matters for the developer to come back and say, oh, well, yeah, but it says it has to be in general accordance with that. If that was a particular sticking point, we would have no problem in removing that plan from the list, from the condition.
Thank you, that's very helpful. And I think a comment on the internal footpaths. Thank you.
Yeah, just a comment from me. It's a word of caution, really, with the wording of any such condition as suggested by yourself, to accelerate the provision of that cycle footway internally. That often leads to difficulties with the build, where if you've provided the cycle footway in an area that you haven't yet built the housing for, that cycle footway is closed off because it is deemed unsafe with construction traffic moving through the site. So it's just a word of caution that we may need to word that condition carefully, so that we're not saying it has to be built and kept available throughout the life thereof, because it won't be possible to keep it available.
Thank you on that. Could I just say, I also recognise that we're going to be using an existing dark lane, and therefore that dark lane access will need to be retained, I thought, is what you said.
So just to give members some reassurance on delivery of the infrastructure, it is normal and it will be secured through the 106 in terms of there needs to be a phasing plan, and then delivery of phased development. I'm sorry, we can't have members being approached during the committee. Sorry. So there would be a phasing plan as part of the 106, which would set out which phase is being delivered when and what infrastructure would be delivered as part of that phase. So we would ensure that infrastructure gets delivered as soon as possible within any given phase of development. But the point raised by Highways is right. We cannot deliver infrastructure through a construction site because it's just not safe for people. But through the phasing plan, we can control the delivery of the infrastructure per phase as and when it comes forward. So you get the start, and when you get halfway down, you've got connections going through. So at least you start getting half of the connection points before you get to the end point of development.
I think there should be a willingness to work constructively, and I hope the constructors do, because there is a overwhelming desire. The path which is outside this building has been put in place, and within a year, for a population of probably 8,000 or 9,000, 108,000 people used it on the counters. It is something seriously wanted by the community. Thank you. I will now move on to Simon, and then I'm going to allow Helen to come back briefly, if I may.
Point of order. It's been 2 hours.
You would like a comfort break? Are people, I'm quite happy to, because if you leave the room while it's going on, we can't vote. So I will give everyone to 10 past, literally 5 minutes. Yep, if people want a comfort break. Thank you. Where?
Yeah.
Are there a number of areas?
Yes. Yeah.
There'll be numbers.
If you want to go into the office, go through the door then with your bag. There are some additional rooms on the back of the ones in forward.
You don't. It's in my question. I still want to. Building up the nerves down because I'm nervous about asking a question and then you're giving them a break and I'm shaking.
Oh, no. I missed that.
We can swipe it on.
Yeah, it's just that because we're actually agreeing a whole bunch of facts.
It's generally in accordance, so we're not confident in the run.
So it's very hard to argue against them.
So while you were out of the room, a condition was added for the external lighting. I don't know if you missed that.
Good.
It was definitely an omission there.
Yes. And,
I think it was, said there was an external lighting condition on the outline.
There wasn't,
So,
yes, earlier, but it was.
But the point is that it's, I think the point Heather made was that wading through hundreds and hundreds of five, and I like her comment, professional manipulation of the planning process. It's just, it's so true.
Well, I'm listening to you think it's bad news, it's just bad news, really. We interviewed last week. Tom, well, we had 2 people, one Alison was unsure, so we offered to another chap.
I'm sorry. No, I totally understand. Misunderstanding. We haven't.
I can say half one, so
We haven't done.
Okay, I'm my second thing is Claire's happy. However, I would like to speak again as I asked.
I think he might come back but apparently he's got another job as well. So I'm gonna have to reopen it, I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah. So Paul Ross, my
Right, thank you everyone, and my apologies on the end of the much welcome comfort break. Shall we continue? And I now have two more people who wish to speak on this. First of all, Councillor Carswell.
Thank you, Chair. I've been waiting so long, my nerves are built up now. I'm late to this committee because of the sad demise of Nick, so you'll have to bear with me. I'm going to speak about the play areas. On the plan, there are a number of play areas across the development. I know it's not finalised where they're going to be, but I'd be disappointed if that's how they are going to be, because there are many estates where there are small play areas of 3 or 4 pieces of equipment that are seldom used and are just not very well thought out. What would be nicer would be what's in the Shepton Mallet neighbourhood plan, a community play park in the middle of the estate with 20 to 30 pieces of equipment that could then be a meeting place for the community. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think it will be a reserved matter, but I think that's really helpful to have that on record as a suggestion, and maybe the conversation which will be ongoing with the town council. Thank you. Right, sorry, do you wish to say anything?
Yeah, sorry. In respect to the fact it is a reserved matter, so it is a reserved matter in terms of the exact location and the number of equipment and things like that. There are policy requirements set out in the Mendip local plan that basically sets out guidance for when local areas of play, which are the smaller ones, are provided, when local equipped areas of play, which are the next size up, and when neighbourhood areas of play are required, and when muggers, which is a multi-use games area. So this site provides all of those because it has to provide the smaller ones as well as the medium and the large. It's not providing a mugger, but it is providing a significant financial contribution to other play spaces in the wider area, because it's actually, the site itself is a stone's throw away from the green, which is really quite nicely equipped as well. So that contribution would likely go to enhancing the provision at that space, but it's a policy requirement in terms of proximity of the smaller areas of play for local residents.
Thank you, Chair. Just to come back quickly, I am aware there are distance requirements or suggestions as regards play parks. However, I know in a settlement that I happen to live in, we're presently looking at the play parks, and we're going to close down a lot of those small play parks and just consolidate into equipment into bigger parks, because it makes more sense for the community. And I think it'd be a shame if we had 5 or 6 small little bits all over the place, rather than one or maybe 2 or 3 central play areas. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think it's interesting, the ability to close them down is that the Somerset Council are handing over to town councils local play areas. And by doing so, it gives them the opportunity to be adaptive. And could I make a suggestion that perhaps as we write the new local plan for Somerset, we look again at some of the policies which have come from the old authorities. Thank you for that. Right, Helen.
Yes, thank you.
Could I just ask you to be as brief as you can, because I know you've got another 2 items you want to raise.
Well, that's what I mean. I think next time I'll just say it all at the beginning, because yeah, some of it's been covered. So on highways, first of all, as I understand it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, the parking strategy was written in 2013, and it conflicts to a certain extent with the new transport strategy, which is coming out, which is looking at active travel first, and it's got a massive number of parking spaces for, actually, I believe, this is my opinion, others may not agree, for a development that is within walking distance, 10 minutes of the town centre. There's a large number of parking spaces, which that's just as a matter of fact. going on to other highways issues, Dark Lane, I see that in the section 106 and Councillor Susie Hart's point about what are we actually discussing today. One of the things we're discussing, I understand it, is the principles in the section 106 agreement. And I see that you've got, for example, surfacing improvements to Dark Lane. I'm not sure if that is the cycle path that Councillor White was referring to, but I wondered if that there could be a trigger if it's a section 106 thing rather than a condition thing, where that is brought forward so that after 200 houses or at the end of the first phase or something like that, that surface improvement is done to Dark Lane, and it has to be a standard by which cyclists can use, not just some pebbles or something. Then I also wondered, going back to what the parish council said about their concern about this crossing that goes into Collett Park, and that you've looked at it and it's on a bend and it's not going to work, whether or not if we can't have that there, I think at the moment, Susie identified that we had 14 access points. So I'm not sure if this would be an extra access point, but that there was some kind of designated route towards Collett Park and the secondary school, and that somehow we could look at that again. Now, I don't know if that's too late to do that now, or whether we can add an extra condition. That's what that is it? So that's going into, does that go to the Strawberry Line? Okay, and to Collett Park. Okay, well, it looks like it's been covered then. All right, thank you for that. The other thing is that I see that now with the, you've now got an access point on that southern road, the new southern road going across all the way to Compton Road. I was a bit concerned that might be used as a rat run. If I lived in Compton Road or a bit north of Compton Road, what I might be tempted to do is go down Compton Road and then across that to get onto the A371. I mean, it's just something I just noticed. And on that southern point there, the land to the south at the moment, the public do have access. Now, I know that that's not formal access, and it's just the landowners allow people to walk their dogs across that area. I walked around it last night. There was loads of people using the land. I believe now what's going to happen is that land south of the development, which is what some of the parish council was saying, could you be used for some of the extra housing to reduce the density. It seems to me that it's going to be, it's not owned by the showground, that it's going to be all privatised, it's all going to be sealed off. So is that going to be used for biodiversity or not? Because you implied that that was part of the biodiversity, where some of the biodiversity mitigation was going to take place. And if it is it going to be safeguarded in the future and not developed? It's also the highest point. That bottom left-hand corner where of the site, south and west, I should say, is the highest point. And it would be great if we didn't have buildings there. I'd like to support Councillor White's point about looking again at where the 3-storey buildings are. I actually don't go along with some of these developers' ideas about what makes a landmark building. So they want to put these landmark buildings like this 3-storey care home, for example, and another one on 371. I actually think it will look really out of place. It will dwarf the things opposite, the Tadley Acres opposite. It will create shadows on the road in the winter, and actually, and possibly onto some of the housing there. I don't really like that. So I would like to see. I'd like to support Councillor White on taking out that building heights plan. And I'm sorry, but I have to ask yet again. About the design principles, going on to page 119, where we were discussing what are we actually agreeing today, and we are agreeing that the reserved matters application shall generally accord with the following: land use parameter plan, building heights plan. Are we taking that out or aren't we? And then these various other things: detailed illustrative master plan. Are we going to be referring to that or aren't we in the future? Can that care home be moved? Can the school be moved? Or is it going to be pretty much fixed? If it's not you, Dawn, or the officer that's dealt with this outline, and then 3 or 4 years down the line, another officer is in place and just has the minutes of this meeting, the recording won't be available anymore, right? Are they going to be really strict about interpreting these parameter plans as something that they really have to follow? Or, you know, how much weight are they going to give significant weight to these plans? Because I am really unhappy about the land use parameter plan that suggests that these parking forecourts should go behind all the buildings and having these extra roads. And I don't want that in there. And either you take it out now, or I can be reassured that those land use parameter plans will be given some weight, but will not absolutely dictate some young planner coming in 3 or 4 years' time and interpreting what we've said today. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm trying not to be offended that I'm not a young planner. Right, okay, I'll start with the last question just because it's the freshest one in my head. So the building heights and the illustrative master plan. Normally on an outline application, we do not condition the illustrative master plan because it is illustrative. That's the only plan that actually shows the parking courtyards. So I am happy to take that and the building heights one out. Obviously, the agent is here, has heard all the debate, has heard the concerns. As part of any future approval of reserved matters application, that should come in with street scenes and sections and actually demonstrate the location and height of those buildings relative to that slope. So subject to that amendment, I'm happy just to remove reference to those two plans on condition 2. In terms of, I'll go to access next, because you were saying about a rat run to Compton Road. There's no vehicular access onto Compton Road. It's all pedestrian and cycle connection points. So I think probably this one might have been the cause of confusion. So it's shown as a turning head. So within the site, where the blue-green line is, that's the edge of the site. So you can turn your vehicle and get back out the lane, but the only cut through is for pedestrians and cycles. So there was another one here. Again, that's pedestrian and cycle. Oh, okay. So the other one then, yeah, sorry, is potentially the new one into the neighbourhood plan allocated site of 150, but that would connect into the 150, which hasn't yet got consent, hasn't yet connected to Compton Road, and would only be acceptable in the event that all circumstances align and any generation through that link would be appropriate for Compton Road. So that's a bit of a future point to be aware of. In terms of dark lane, it is in the 106. It is a requirement of the 106 and it is to be retained and surfaced up to an appropriate standard. The triggers get agreed through the 106, so we haven't yet triggered it. But the fact that it's an early trigger that members want will be something that we can bear in mind in the drafting of the legal agreement. And in respect to the green space.
The mitigation.
Yeah, let me just find. So this again falls within the generally in accordance with. So this area, I don't know if members can see it properly. The shading's perhaps not the greatest.
It's to the west of the showground.
Yeah. So what we've got is agricultural land, also used in connection with the annual midsummer show, to be managed as enhanced grassland, is what the indicative landscape plan shows.
Is that part of the mitigation for biodiversity?
Enhanced grassland will result in a betterment than just grassland. So yes, it results in biodiversity net gain, but the site overall is biodiversity net gain neutral.
And could that be used at a later date? Is there any protection for that, or could that be used at a later date for housing? Because my concern is that it will be on the crest of the hill, and then everything to the south, everyone to the south looking up will see it.
Yeah, I mean, as it is at the moment, the landscape parameter plan is the site should be developed generally in accordance with. So at the moment, those 3 parcels at the bottom, 4 parcels at the bottom, are all proposed to be green and open. If a reserve matters application came in and was creeping into that area, we would be questioning whether that's generally in accordance with that plan. And it would also be contrary to the parameter plan, which also shows this area of green at the bottom.
Thank you for saying that you'll take out the detailed illustrative master plan. Can you just tell me what the risk might be of taking that out? Will we get something completely different? Could we get something completely different? Because everybody likes it at the moment.
Yeah.
Sort of likes it, yeah.
I mean, the risk of taking it out is that what you might get might be slightly different, but the difference, you are still required to build it generally in accordance with the landscape parameter plan, generally in accordance with the land use parameter plan, so that the overall form and scale of uses is the same. And it's an illustrative layout. So even if we were to keep it in, the fact it's illustrative in its own right means it's not an approved document anyway.
Okay, thank you. And lastly, I'd just like to withdraw my seconding of the deferral, please, because I believe that Claire's been approached separately, that we're now not going to put that proposal on the table for a deferral.
Okay.
Thank you. Can we deal with that in a moment, Claire? I think the officer wants to make a further comment on your...
It was only a very brief comment about the illustrative master plan. Obviously, informatives aren't binding on the council, but if members were concerned about in the southwest corner, the courtyard arrangements, it would, you could, as an informative, say members were not convinced by the proposal of the courtyards and ask in regard that is given due attention before the reserve matters. I mean, it's not the same as a condition, but it would at least put on record your comments.
Do we have to add that now?
We would add, well, you would need to get agreement.
Do I have to put a motion forward for that?
Well, I'll check with Dawn. Would you be, well, it depends. I don't know how many people agree with.
Well, that's why I need to put it forward as a motion and propose it.
Okay. We would take that. One other comment I have, you mentioned the policies which determine the parking. You left one out, which is quite critical, and that is the new placemaking policy of the council, where it's focused on the urban environment and the need, and not necessarily the need for as much car parking as you would expect. But equally, hopefully, it's not interpretive, that placemaking for rural areas, which I know there's been concern over the application we saw in Boltonsborough with the lack of parking. So
that's why we shouldn't be interpreting this parking strategy that's now how old? 12 years old.
Yeah, it's been superseded by the placemaking. Okay, thank you.
Have I made a proposal or not?
Sorry, I've got three things here in front of me which I need to address. One is Claire wanted to make a comment about her proposal, and then Suzanne, is this about something else? Okay, we'll do one at a time.
So just to be clear, I've not been approached. I've just reflected on the conversations and listening, and I have a hope that there will be a constructive dialogue with the town council stakeholders, with the agent, and that the benefits for the town around what the town will get and how it will help the development of the community, what the community actually needs. This is a significant opportunity, and I believe that the investor and the developer and the agent will work with those that know how best to benefit the town. So I'd like to change my proposal, if that is that okay to do that?
Yes.
To going with to follow the approval with the officer. I can't say it, but to agree with the officer to approve and allow those conversations to continue. Do I have a seconder?
Okay. Yeah, seconder from Tony Robbins. And can I just say that I'm going to put in a proposal to delete the building height plan from the officer recommendation. So I believe that should be taken first.
And
the illustrative master plan. And I did have just one other person who wanted to talk. Suzanne, was there anything you wanted to come back?
I just wanted to say that I was going to propose that we vote in favour of officer recommendation.
I think that's
for the 620 houses, the access points as illustrated on the movement and access parameter plan, and we can only trust that the parking will be adequate. I wasn't going to ask
Being-
for anything else to be changed.
Okay, can I just for clarity, the formal proposal which councillor Sully made has now been withdrawn and councillor Kay has withdrawn her.
Chair, can mine not be just changed? No.
No,
Okay.
you haven't, we have another one on the table and
So I just want to say that I'm happy to support this and vote with it or second it if necessary.
Yeah.
But on the basis that we are going to take out the building heights plan and the detailed illustrative master plan from the plans, and that we're going to have the informative that that some people, I don't think everybody is concerned about this, but some people are concerned about the parking arrangements behind the properties. I can't remember what it's called now, parking something or other.
I'm not sure. So for clarity, we have a proposal on the table from Claire Sully with a seconder from Tony Robbins. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm told Highways want to say something and then I'll come back to the summary.
Chair, if I might say something. We have a proposal on the table, which was from councillor Sully. It was originally seconded by councillor Helen Kay, who has now withdrawn that second. So unless there is another second, and we understand that councillor Sully wants to, it's not change, it's actually withdraw your motion. So if you are able to confirm that, then without a seconder, that's then dealt with, it's withdrawn.
So
I would like to withdraw my
And we
my
have a new-
proposal for deferring my original one, and I put another proposal.
which is seconded by councillor Robbins. And I've got one on the table, which is seconded by councillor Kay about the items on the 106 agreement, section 2, the building plan height and land use parameter. And that before we do anything, Highways want to make a comment.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's just a kind of follow-up to the discussions regarding the parking strategy and the age of and what takes precedent, etc., etc. Yes, the parking strategy was written in 2013. It has not been superseded by any other document at this point. The parking standards set up in an optimum parking level, unless there are local guidelines as to why that parking level should be different. And that may be more and it may be less. So it does allow for less parking to accord with things like the placemaking, but it doesn't mean that it has to be that number. It just allows, that sets out in Shepton Mallet, for argument's sake, how many spaces a 2-bedroom house requires. But that could be Shepton Mallet on the very edge of Shepton Mallet, or it could be Shepton Mallet on the very edge of the town centre. So that's where your specific site requirements could lessen the parking levels.
That is not my main issue. My main issue is the informative, and I don't know how to get that on the table.
Apologies, councillor Cowes. I was making a more generalised point rather than for your issue per se, because there has been discussion that effectively the parking standards are dead. The parking standards are not dead. They are now supplemented with the other guidance documents and have always set out optimum parking levels, but they are site specific.
Okay, that is really helpful information. So as we need to perhaps play that out in a training session to understand where placemaking takes precedent over the national or the guidance. And we just need to talk about that and have an understanding where we're going on that. And perhaps we'll do this not now, but as a training session. Right, okay, go on.
I'm really sorry. I just wanted to double check on the motion that you put for change to the condition 2 in terms of. Oh, sorry. I just wanted to check because you mentioned the land use parameter plan.
Yeah.
My comment about the potential to put an informative on was in relation to the illustrative master plan. So I just wanted to be clear which plan it is that so members are clear which plans you're recommending or maybe deciding to take out.
I'm happy with that, but I'm not even quite clear what an informative is. But I'm happy that it turns into the detailed illustrative master plan is the one that we take out. If the proposers and seconder are happy with that, taking that out, because I don't want these blinking parking courts at the back of the houses, and I keep saying.
Okay. Right, for total guidance now, we're saying that we have within the 106, so you can all see it, under item 2, there are some plans which are regarded as being indicative but not necessarily compulsory. And the 3 are building height plan, the land use parameters, and the illustrative master plan. Now, the guidance that I'm asking of the officers, is that going to cover our concerns, or are we over-egging it by taking the 3 of them out?
I think, if I'm honest, you're over-egging it by taking the land use parameter
I'm happy
plan
to
out.
leave that in.
In terms of the detailed illustrative master plan, my comment was if that's left in, the concern was you might lose some of the good. That's what I heard from members. So my suggestion for that was to leave that in, but then have an information to the applicants say that their members did have concerns about the courtyards to the thing, so to the courtyards to the southwest of the site. So the only thing that would change we would take out the building heights plan, which there was concern by everyone. So that condition would remain as it is without the building heights plan, and then there'd be an informative.
Okay, that's really quite helpful. So
that would be good from my point of view.
And
can I ask a question, Chair? If you're taking the heights that out, what is replacing it? Could it be worse? You know, like how do you know by taking it out it makes it? But I'm just asking the question.
The key thing about it is at the moment we don't have the reserve matters, the details. All we got is an overarching plan. By going to reserve matters without this plan in place, then it will be looked totally afresh at reserve matters, and there is nothing to be gained by hanging on to the plan, unlike other things, because of the nature of what it is. And that's the difference. So we just have one amendment to the 106 agreement. Now, condition, sorry, my apologies. Could have advice, do we vote on that proposal first? Yeah, so we vote first on the removal of one condition, which is around land use, the building height plan, and then we will then go on to the yeah. Okay, people, do they understand what they're voting on?
Voting on the informative as well.
Yes.
Yeah, does everyone agree with that? Yep. So proposal by myself, seconded by Councillor Robbins, to remove a condition related to the plan cited or for.
By Helen Kay.
No, it was. Oh, your Helen now. Okay. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, seconded by Helen Kay. To remove the building height plan. People content with that? Could I have a show of hands, please? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Those against 10. Any abstentions? 1. Okay, we now then move to
That's decided.
yes, decided 10-1. Thank you.
I thought they were just voting on that. On the proposed change to the recommended conditions, you do need to take another vote now on the actual substantive motion.
Yeah, we do. The substantive motion is in front of us.
Because they didn't, that was what.
Yep.
Okay, let's do it this way, and then you can tell me afterwards what the legal rules I've changed. And we go now to Councillor Sully's proposal to accept the officer's recommendation with the noted removal of one of the conditions, and seconded by Councillor Robbins. And could I have a show of hands, please? Unanimous. Great. Well done, everyone, after a very lengthy thing. And I would just like to say, on behalf of this planning committee, I'm delighted for Shepton. I think you've got the opportunity to have a fantastic contribution to the town. And as Councillor Sully said, this contributes to the regeneration of the town, which is, as we talk, going ahead. Many thanks indeed, everyone.
I put the appeal.
Right, yes. Okay, we have one more agenda item, and that's the appeals today. Shall we see if we can go through this quickly? Because I expect there's some rumbling tummies here, if nothing else. Okay, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be as quick as I possibly can. So it wasn't on the agenda, so apologies, but an appeal decision came in after the agenda had been published. Rather than leaving it to the next meeting, we thought we'd just do a verbal update. Hopefully it was circulated to you as well. The appeal relates to Tower Hill at Bath Road, Beckington in Somerset. It was an appeal against non-determination because the decision wasn't made within 13 weeks. Although officers did make it clear that had we been in a position to determine it, we would have recommended refusal in any case. There was a hearing on the 8th of July. Just before I go on to the summary, I'll just mention that you may have spotted, if anyone's read it, that on paragraph 16, it says the proposal's cramped form would reflect the local character and distinctiveness of Beckington. And I can only assume, given the decision, that the inspector meant to say would not reflect the character and local distinctiveness of Beckingham. But the key considerations here were the siting location in the countryside. The inspector felt that there were no exceptional circumstances to justify the number of homes proposed, which was 24 dwellings. The inspector felt that there would be harm to the landscape setting, and it's a very visually prominent location. The inspector felt that it would not reflect the character and distinctiveness of Beckington in terms of its layout, and crucially as well would not preserve the setting of the nearby listed buildings. And on that basis, although we don't have a 5-year land supply, and this is delivering 24 homes, and some weight was given to that, the inspector concluded that the tilted balance under paragraph 11 of the NPPF was not engaged in this instance, but they actually went further and said that even had it been effectively, the harms in this instance would outweigh any benefits arising from the housing. So a really good decision, I think, in this instance, and good to be able to pass on some positive news to members at committee. And thank you for your patience with me today. I'm here because you may be aware Thomas Jones has now left the council. I manage the North and West teams, but I'm doing this committee and the South committee on the 16th. We are looking for a replacement for Thomas, but you may end up having to see my mug again, I'm afraid, but dependent on how quick.
This is not the one that we debated recently, is it? This is another one in Beckington, just to be sure. Right, thank you. Clear, yeah.
This one's never come to committee. And on that basis, I'm going to call this meeting to a close. And thank you very much indeed for all your efforts today. Thank you.
Thank you.